Chapter 1644. The fire Qilin suffered repeated attacks and was riddled with wounds. There were even a few large holes on its body. It was also confined by the main root of the Tree of Life and could not move at all. The hidden mysterious sword merged into its body, but the sword light came out of its body and became more brilliant and sharp. Thousands of different lights wrapped around the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin roared again and stretched its neck, its body straightened. Suddenly, the roar stopped abruptly as if someone was stuck in its throat, and it could not make a single sound. What was going on? Everyone was stunned. Was it going to die just like that? Was it really that simple? A crack appeared on the fire Qilin's armor like scales. Then, like a spider web, the cracks quickly spread and covered its entire body in a short while. It was like an exquisite piece of porcelain that had been hit and cracked inch by inch. This scene deeply shocked everyone. Everyone was frightened and stared with their eyes wide open. They did not understand what was going on. However, they seemed to have a feeling that something was about to happen. Boom! A loud sound came from the fire Qilin's body, as if something had cracked and exploded. A look of despair appeared in the fire Qilin's eyes. The red light that was originally wrapped around the fire Qilin spread into its body through the cracks and disappeared as if it was absorbed by something. The red light was the yang qi essence contained in the Earth's core. It had reached a level that could be seen with the naked eye, and was also a delicacy for the fire Qilin. However, at this moment, although the yang qi essence entered its body, it was not used by the fire Qilin. Instead, it was absorbed by someone else. Not only that, the fire Qilin also found that the yang qi essence in its body was being consumed bit by bit, as if it was being sucked away by a huge attraction. Absorbing the essence from its body was equivalent to nibbling away its life bit by bit. It was needless to say how difficult it was to achieve this. The fire Qilin never thought that it would be like this, but it was really happening. Its liver and gallbladder were torn apart, and it truly experienced intense fear. Its senses were much sharper than other people's, and it quickly understood why all of this had happened. It was extremely regretful that it had swallowed that person in one gulp. Without a doubt, the source of all this was that person. It was definitely him who was causing trouble. Otherwise, how could he have ended up in such a sorry state? It was even more impossible for him to be struck by those powerful magic treasures and lose half his life. It was even more impossible for him to resist the other party's encroachment. It still wanted to struggle, but it couldn't move at all. It could only let the other party nibble away at it. Its deduction was correct. All of this was indeed caused by Tang Zheng. After he was swallowed into the fire Qilin's stomach, he did not die. On the contrary, the fire Qilin's stomach was like a paradise to him instead of a pit of fire. The fire Qilin was born by devouring the yang qi essence in the magma. Its stomach was like another mass of magma, and it was no less powerful than the magma in the Earth's core. If anyone else had entered its stomach, they would have been refined long ago, leaving nothing behind. But Tang Zheng was different. Not only did he practice the indestructible body, but he also needed all of this now. The fire Qilin's stomach just happened to give him the best environment. And this was what he had been searching for. Then he quickly adjusted his state and absorbed the yang qi essence of the fire Qilin. Although Tang Zheng still couldn't move, this was a subconscious action. He didn't need to control it at all. It was natural and success came naturally. The fire Qilin had too much yang qi essence. In addition, all of its energy was focused on Tian Chanzi and the others, so it didn't notice that Tang Zheng had absorbed a little yang qi essence. But by the time it discovered something, it was already too late. Not only was the yang qi in its body attracted, but even the yang qi essence in the magma in the Earth's core was also attracted. It turned into streaks of red light, passing through its body and being absorbed into Tang Zheng's body. In a short period of time, Tang Zheng had absorbed too much, and the effect was very obvious. It proved that his judgment was right, and the method was feasible. Yin and Yang countered each other, and extreme Yang gave birth to Yin. A little bit of pure Yin energy actually appeared in his body, like a clear spring. The pure Yin energy was like spring water, flowing little by little into his 8 extraordinary meridians. His mobility was recovering bit by bit, and a black hole appeared in his palm. Sky swallowing technique. He used the absorption technique of the sky swallowing technique, and quickly absorbed the yang qi essence of the fire qilin, faster than before. The fire qilin suffered a series of painful attacks, and was almost half dead. It had no way to resist Tang Zheng, and could only watch him do whatever he wanted. It was like a fish on the chopping board, at Tang Zheng's disposal. Tang Zheng needed too much yang qi essence, so he did not dare to hold back in the slightest, nor did he dare to show mercy. If he gave the fire qilin the slightest chance, it would definitely counterattack and kill him unprepared. At that time, his advantage would be gone, and he would fall into a desperate situation. He absolutely could not do that. In the fierce battle just now, he clearly saw the danger that everyone was facing. How could he take such a risk? Although the fire qilin was a divine beast, it possessed great strength. If it could be subdued and used, it would definitely be a great help. However, he didn't dare to take the risk and try to subdue the fire qilin. The only way was to continuously absorb its power and supply it to himself. One of his hands was already able to move freely, and the hidden profound sword was tightly gripped in his palm. The hidden profound sword was connected to its master, and in an instant, it received a boost. Its power increased explosively, and the sword light was as bright as the stars. Whoosh! Whoosh! Streaks of sword light spiraled in all directions, cutting the internal organs of the fire qilin. Roar! The fire qilin roared in pain, but to no avail. The sword light pierced through the cracks in its body, and immediately, its entire body was enveloped by the sword light. Seeing this scene, everyone's spirit was shaken. How could they not understand what was going on? Tang Zheng, it's really him. Yes, it's him. Too powerful. I knew he wouldn't abandon us. Nothing will happen to him. Some people were so excited that they were incoherent, and some were crying tears of joy. Coming back from death's door, everyone was like riding a roller coaster, flying from the abyss to the sky and back to the clouds. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, and their expressions relaxed. Since Tang Zheng had made a desperate counterattack, the scales of victory must have been tilted. Moreover, everyone was not stupid. From the scene in front of them, they could already determine who had the upper hand. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng had the upper hand. Every dog has its day. The fire qilin was completely at a disadvantage, and had fallen into a passive situation. Boom! With a loud sound, an explosion sounded from the fire qilin's body. Then the fire qilin's entire body exploded, and fell into a ball of fire. The raging fire spread in all directions, and wherever it passed, the rocks immediately melted into magma. Its power was enormous. Retreat! Tian Chanzi roared, and protected everyone as they hurriedly retreated into the cave. But the cave was also rapidly melting. Chapter 1645. The cave melted and turned into a water curtain cave. The magma dripped down and turned into a bead curtain. But through this bead curtain, one could vaguely see a shocking scene. The fire qilin was completely enveloped in flames, and its body could no longer be seen. The flames seemed to have penetrated the core of the earth. The raging flames seemed to burn endlessly. After an unknown amount of time, which seemed to be as long as a century, there was movement in the flames. Everyone instantly widened their eyes and stared straight at the flames. A figure walked out from the flames. Everyone's hearts tightened. Could it be that the fire qilin had walked out again? Wouldn't that be a waste of effort? Finally, the figure became clearer and clearer. Everyone could finally see it clearly. They were beaming with joy and couldn't help but exclaim loudly, Tang Zheng. Yes, the figure that walked out was actually Tang Zheng. He walked out with a majestic gait, and was in high spirits. He was no longer a wooden figure that couldn't move. Everyone ignored the power of the flames and rushed forward shouting, Tang Zheng, you really succeeded. Are you alright? At first, everyone didn't know if this method would work or not. It was only because Tang Zheng insisted on doing it that they agreed to fulfill his wish. Now it seemed that he was right. Extreme Yang gave birth to Yin. This method could really succeed. Looking at the people who didn't care about their own safety and rushed towards him, a faint smile appeared on Tang Zheng's face. With a wave of his hand, the flames behind him were instantly extinguished. The magma in the core of the earth also calmed down, and returned to its original tranquility. There was only a gurgling sound of bubbles. He took large strides to welcome everyone. The women didn't care about their shyness and rushed into his arms. Immediately his large arms were stuffed. Everyone squeezed into his arms and didn't care about their shyness. Smelling the familiar scent on his body, they felt especially at ease. Tang Zheng hugged the women tightly in his arms. Even Linger was no exception. Linger stole a glance at him and sweetly leaned on his shoulder. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes. This was simple and direct dog abuse. This brat had just walked out of the gates of hell, and so many people were already throwing themselves at him. He was the envy of others. Tang Zheng was also very moved. If it wasn't for his confidant who helped him without fear of danger, he was afraid that everything might not have gone so smoothly. Whether or not he could survive the crisis was also unknown. Moreover, he hadn't truly survived the crisis yet. After a long time, the women finally calmed down and reluctantly left his embrace. They glanced left and right, and everyone's eyes were filled with shyness. In any case, everyone had done the same thing, so they weren't that shy anymore. Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi and turned his head away. He coughed and said, "You can turn around now." Tian Chanzi resentfully turned his head and fiercely glared at him. "You brat, you just can't stop. It's the new year, and you're causing so much trouble." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "I don't want to." "Then how are you now? Are you okay?" Tian Chanzi asked with concern. Tang Zheng's face sank. Everyone's heart trembled as they looked at him nervously. Could there be another problem? Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. This time, it was indeed the pure yang energy that caused trouble. Moreover, it was constantly accumulating. If everyone didn't treat me in time, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to keep my life. As for now, I can only temporarily control the pure yang energy, because the earth's core and the fire Qilin's body contain enough yang qi. Extreme yang produces yin, so I can barely suppress the pure yang energy. However, it will definitely erupt in the future. At that time, there will be a huge crisis. These words were understated, but it was like thunder in everyone's ears. They originally thought that everything was fine, but they didn't expect there to be so many repercussions. Then what should we do? The women asked anxiously. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry, there will definitely be a way to completely solve this problem." The women looked at each other and thought of one person at the same time. That was the Empyrean fairy. Perhaps only her 9 saint body could completely solve this problem. However, everyone tacitly didn't mention it. Tang Zheng naturally knew about this method, but it wasn't as simple as eating and drinking. It was a matter of mutual consent and couldn't be forced. He wouldn't sacrifice others for his own survival, especially those close to him. What about the fire Qilin? Tian Chanzi asked curiously. Tang Zheng said disappointedly, "If it wasn't for the urgent situation, the fire Qilin is so powerful. It would be great to take it for my own use, but I don't dare to take this risk. Moreover, to truly achieve extreme yang producing yin and restore my mobility, I can only completely absorb the yang qi essence in its body. This is faster and more convenient than absorbing it from the magma in the earth's core. Without the yang qi essence, the fire Qilin will naturally cease to exist." Everyone suddenly realized. Tian Chanzi sighed. "I didn't expect that the legendary divine beast really exists, and it's in the earth's core. I'm afraid very few people would think of this." Li Xiaotian had an idea and said, "Since the fire Qilin lives in the earth's core, then what about other worlds? Are there fire Qilins in the earth's core?" As soon as these words were said, everyone's eyes lit up. The fire Qilin was powerful. If they could take it under their command, it would definitely be a new force. Originally, they didn't have any hope, but they didn't expect Li Xiaotian's words to wake them up. There were so many great worlds, and if other worlds also had Earth's cores, then wouldn't there also be fire Qilins? If they wanted a fire Qilin, then they could just go to the Earth's core in other worlds. Of course, this was just an idea. It wouldn't be easy to really achieve this. Everyone couldn't wait to leave this place and return to report the good news. However, Tang Zheng's gaze fell on Linger's hand. She was still tightly holding the tree of life's main root. He sighed thoughtfully. "This is the tree of life's main root. It's really extraordinary. It can actually restrain the fire Qilin." As he spoke, he grabbed the main root. However, a strong rebound force hit his hand with a bang, causing him to withdraw his hand in pain. Seeing this, Ling hurriedly let go of the main root and asked with concern, "Master, I'm sorry. Did I hurt you?" Tang Zheng smiled and shook his head. "It's fine. Ling you're really amazing. You're the only one who can freely control this main root. And its power is extraordinary." Ling breathed a sigh of relief and said shyly, "I was just lucky." "No, this is your unique talent, which is more powerful than ours. If you have the main root of the Tree of Life as a magical treasure, then your fighting strength will naturally increase rapidly," Tang Zheng said in a deep voice, his eyes shining as he stared at the main root of the Tree of Life. The main root had fallen back into the magma, and was safe and sound in the rolling magma. Ling shook her head. "This is the Tree of Life's main root. How can I have the fortune to have it as a magic treasure?" "That's not necessarily true." Tang Zheng's gaze turned cold as he said meaningfully, "I wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. All the lovers in the world will get married. Follow my WeChat account, Tang Xiao. To read the latest novel, please visit the website." Chapter 1646. That might not be the case. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Could it be that he had a method, or rather, a method to forcefully cut off a section of the Tree of Life's main root? Tian Chanzi earnestly reminded Tang Zheng, the Tree of Life is related to the entire world. Once the main root is damaged, what if the Tree of Life is also damaged? Ling reluctantly looked at the main root after hearing this and hurriedly nodded in agreement. "Senior is right. The Tree of Life is the most important. Master, I can use other magic treasures." Tang Zheng looked deeply at Ling and said, "You are fated with the Tree of Life. This is your destiny." After pausing for a moment, he stared at the main root and said, "Tree of Life, I know you are listening to me. Since Ling is fated with you, why don't you give her a section of the main root? This shouldn't be a big deal, right?" Hearing his words, everyone's expression trembled. They stared straight at the main root, as if waiting for some kind of reaction. However, there was no reaction. Everyone's heart suddenly sank. Ling Er's face flashed with disappointment, but she looked gratefully at Tang Zheng and said, "Master, let's go." Tang Zheng sighed inwardly. It seemed that his thinking was too simple. He wouldn't really touch the Tree of Life. Just as Tian Chanzi said, a slight move in one part could affect the situation, as the Tree of Life was too important to this world. Everyone walked to the entrance of the cave, and prepared to go back the way they came. Suddenly, there was movement behind them. A wave of magma rose up like a huge wave. Everyone was shocked and stopped in their tracks. They saw the main root flickering in the huge wave and flying towards them. They were shocked. Could it be that the main root wanted to attack them? Could it be that Tang Zheng's words angered the Tree of Life? Shua! A dazzling red light flickered on the main root. The following scene made everyone's eyes pop out. Everyone was dumbstruck and kept asking themselves, "What did I just see? Is this all real?" Of course, all of this was real. The main root of the Tree of Life actually broke off on its own. A section of the main root flew towards Ling. Ling covered her pink lips with both hands. She was so shocked that she couldn't say anything. The look in her eyes was also extremely complicated. The main root flew in front of her. She subconsciously reached out her hand, and the main root landed firmly in her palm. She stared blankly at the main root in her hand. For a moment, there were thousands of words stuck in her chest, but she couldn't say a single word. She abruptly raised her head and stared at the broken main root. She said excitedly, "Thank you, Tree of Life." The main root of the Tree of Life shook as if to say, "You're welcome." Then, with a flash of light, the broken part started to grow again. Not long after, the main root regained its original appearance and a new section grew out. Tang Zheng also looked at this scene with surprise. He didn't expect the Tree of Life to be so generous as to give Ling a main root. Although the main root was very precious, only Ling could use it. Ling hugged the main root tightly in her arms. Looking at the main root that had grown back completely, she heaved a sigh of relief. Tang Zheng patted her head, looked at the main root in her hand, and said, "This is only a semi-finished product. If it is refined, It will definitely be able to unleash even more power and become a true sacred artifact. Linger said regretfully, but I don't know how to refine artifacts. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, silly girl, I know how to. Linger blushed and said weakly, I was too excited, I didn't think of it. Since your wish has been fulfilled, let's go up. Tang Zheng looked deeply at the main root. Linger waved her hand at the main root and flew out of the cave with the others. So everyone soared into the sky and flew out of the cave. All of the witch clan warriors surrounded them and looked at them anxiously. When they saw the lively Tang Zheng, they all heaved a sigh of relief and revealed an expression of ecstasy. Tang Zheng looked at them emotionally and said, thank you for your hard work. The witch clan warriors shook their heads and excitedly said that it wasn't hard at all. Just now, the mountains shook and the earth shook. We were worried to death. We thought something unexpected had happened. Yi Yuan said with lingering fear. The mountains are shaking and the earth is shaking? Everyone was surprised. Didn't you guys feel it? Yi Yuan asked curiously. The other witch clan warriors were also curious. Tang Zheng muttered to himself for a while, then said, I understand. It must have been that great battle. After all, it was in the center of the earth, and it must have caused such a huge commotion. Since it was the core of the earth, then it would definitely not only affect this place, but it could also cause the entire world to tremble. He quickly spoke out his guess. Everyone was shocked at first, but they immediately felt that it made sense. After the witch clan warriors heard this, their faces were filled with shock. The movements of the earth's core could affect the entire world. Wouldn't that mean that the entire world was shaking? This was simply unheard of. Tang Zheng stared at the big hole beside the tree trunk. With a point of his finger, a surge of energy shot out, and the surrounding soil quickly poured into the hole. Not long later, it was completely blocked. The tree of life is too important to this world. We were too careless in the past. Other than the formation protecting it, we should also send people to protect it and guard it to the death. We absolutely cannot make any mistakes, Tang Zheng said solemnly. The importance of the tree of life had once again increased by a level in his heart. Yi Yuan volunteered. Leave this mission to me, I will definitely protect the tree of life. As long as I still have a breath of life left, I will definitely not let the enemy get close to it. Tang Zheng patted Yi Yuan's shoulder, shook his head and said earnestly, you still have other more important missions. Choose a few witch clan warriors to stay here and protect the tree of life. All right. Yi Yuan angrily agreed, but he could not hold back his curiosity and asked, then what is my mission? Tang Zheng said meaningfully, sky beyond heaven, that is your battlefield. Sky beyond heaven? Yi Yuan was shocked. Tang Zheng had already made his decision. He promised Xiao Bai that he would return to the sky beyond heaven, and since the spring festival had passed, he would have to keep his promise and return to the sky beyond heaven. However, this time, it would definitely not be any easier than last time. He wanted to take revenge for Xiao Bai, so he would definitely have to go all out. A fierce battle was unavoidable. When the others heard this, they all looked at him in shock, but they gradually understood what he meant. All of them had different expressions, some were excited, some were eager to try, and some were worried. Everyone returned and soared into the air. Everywhere they passed, the streets and alleys were filled with people. The mountains shook and the earth shook like an earthquake, causing the entire world to boil. Although there was no earthquake detected, nor was it that powerful, the ripples were so wide that it caught people off guard, and made them even more unable to figure it out. Chapter 1647. The huge commotion around the world had alarmed the governments of various countries. The officials were the first to think of Tang Zheng, and he was the only one who could explain all of this. However, they were unable to break through the defensive array formation outside the villa, let alone force their way in. They could only wait here. Of course, they did not know that Tang Zheng was not in the villa, nor did they know about his situation. Therefore, when Tang Zheng and the others landed at this time, they quickly surrounded them. Young Master Tang, please wait. They hurriedly shouted, but their attitude was extremely respectful. Tang Zheng stopped in his tracks and frowned slightly. He had guessed the reason for their visit, But he was not in a hurry to explain. He asked in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" The officials had also gradually gotten used to Tang Zheng's style, and did not beat around the bush. They went straight to the point and said, "Young Master Tang, this time, the entire world is in an uproar. I wonder if young Master Tang knows the reason? We also know what reason to use to appease the people." Tang Zheng said that he had indeed come for this matter, but he was not prepared to tell the other party the truth. He said indifferently, "This kind of thing will not happen again. As for how to appease the people, that is your specialty. There is no need for me to come up with a plan." With that, he turned around and walked back into the villa. Sigh, young Master Tang. How could the officials be satisfied with this answer? They quickly chased after him. Halt! Yi Yuan stood in front of the other party and stared at them with a stern expression. He was like a mountain, causing them to have no choice but to stop in their tracks. Tang Zheng entered the villa, without even looking back. The officials stretched their necks and looked at his back, but there was nothing they could do. In the end, they could only return resentfully. As for the reason for all of this earth-shattering commotion, they could only guess. As for the excuse to appease the people, it was easy for them to do so there was no need to worry too much. Tang Zheng's return caused the entire villa to be filled with vitality again. The originally lifeless scene was completely brand new. Tang Dahai, Mu Hongyan and Nana stayed at home, and every second felt like a year. Now that they saw that he was safe and sound, they all heaved a sigh of relief. The family was happy and harmonious, and the atmosphere of the new year seemed to have returned. Moreover, the estrangement between the women seemed to have dissolved a lot because of this, like snow melting away. Furthermore, everyone deliberately created an opportunity for Tang Zheng and Linger to be alone. The two of them definitely had a lot to talk about. Everyone was happily sitting on the sofa and watching the rerun of the Spring Festival Gala. Linger's performance on the Spring Festival Gala in particular was remarkable and very attractive. Tang Zheng had sharp ears and sharp eyes. He could vaguely hear the praises for Linger outside the door. Looking at the uneasy Linger, he smiled and said, "Linger, they are all praising you. Did you hear that?" Linger shyly lowered her head and said, "I'm not as powerful as they say. The eyes of the masses are as clear as snow. Your efforts and achievements are obvious to everyone," Tang Zheng said as he lifted the hair by her ear. Linger slowly raised her head and innocently said, "Master, do you really think that Linger is outstanding?" Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, "Of course you are outstanding. Is there anything to doubt about that?" Linger was unable to contain her joy and asked in surprise, "Really?" Her pair of sparkling eyes were filled with joy and anticipation. Although she had received the recognition of the world, it couldn't be compared to Tang Zheng alone. As long as Tang Zheng alone acknowledged her, then everything she had done would be worth it. Tang Zheng stared into her eyes with a burning gaze and nodded his head heavily. He firmly said, "Really?" Linger's face was like a flower in full bloom. In an instant, the room became as warm as spring. Linger was like a dancing butterfly as she flew into Tang Zheng's embrace. With a soft jade in his arms, a fragrant scent assailed his nostrils. Tang Zheng's head swayed as he subconsciously hugged her waist. Her waist was very thin and soft. Perhaps it was because she often practiced dancing, but her elasticity was astonishing. Linger's entire body tensed up. Previously, when she was in close contact with Tang Zheng, it was when Tang Zheng was unconscious and did not have the ability to move. Now that she was tightly held in his embrace, the young girl's heart began to pound. Tang Zheng gently stroked her hair and gently said, "Linger, I will definitely treat you well in the future." Linger foolishly raised her head and looked at him with little stars in her eyes. She said, "Master, I am willing to do all of this. Linger is able to save Master. Linger is more than happy. But you have sacrificed too much," Tang Zheng sincerely said. Linger shook her head. "Not much. Everything I have belongs to Master." Tang Zheng was deeply moved. His arms tightened around her, as if he wanted to squeeze her into his embrace. "Master, there is someone outside." Linger was moved, but she also shyly whispered. Tang Zheng released his hands and lowered his head. He lightly pecked her lips. Linger's face instantly turned red to the roots of her neck. Seeing her like this, Tang Zheng's head shook slightly. However, he still calmed down and said, Linger, take out the main root. I will refine a magic weapon for you. This was something that had to be done before going to sky beyond heaven. Why not take this opportunity to do it? When Linger heard this, she was overjoyed. She quickly suppressed the shyness in her heart, and quickly took out the main root. She held it with both hands and said, Master, this fast? Tang Zheng waved his hand, and the 9 revolving pill furnace flew out and hovered in front of the two of them. Master, for you. Linger wanted to pass the main root to him. Tang Zheng refused. He pointed at the 9 revolving pill furnace and said, Put the main root into the furnace. Only Linger could touch the main root. Linger suddenly realized this. She playfully stuck out her tongue. She held the main root with both hands and carefully placed it into the 9 revolving pill furnace. You watch from the side. I will refine a magic weapon for you. Linger excitedly nodded her head. Her eyes were wide open as she stared at him and the furnace. She was full of expectations. Tang Zheng extended his finger and pointed at the furnace. A ball of heavenly fire flew from his finger into the furnace. With a boom, the furnace was completely lit up by the flames. A ball of green light flew out from the furnace. In an instant, the pictures of birds and beasts on the walls of the furnace moved as if they were alive. They quickly moved around the walls of the furnace. That ball of green light was immediately bound by an invisible force. It was unable to escape from the 9 revolving pill furnace. This ball of green light became brighter and brighter. It was as if it wanted to escape from the furnace. However, in the end, it was unable to do so. If one looked into the furnace, they would be shocked to see that the main root had changed. It was already completely surrounded by heavenly fire. It was burning fiercely. Little green lights flew out from the main root like fireflies. This was the purest energy refined from the main root. The heavenly fire's power was extraordinary. Even the tree of life's main root, which was safe and sound in the lava, was being refined little by little. From this, one could see the power of the heavenly fire. Of course, this was also because the main root had already been separated from the tree of life. Without the support of the tree of life, its resistance was greatly reduced, which was why it was so easy to be refined by the heavenly fire. Linger's eyes widened. This was the first time she had witnessed someone refine a magic weapon. Moreover, it was a magic weapon that was refined for her. Everything was full of novelty. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1648. The main root was not completely melted, but the impurities were completely removed. The essence flew up like a firefly, spiraling around the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. Refining wasn't just a single material, so Tang Zheng wasn't stingy. With a single thought, the most important materials in Sumer world flew into the alchemy furnace. In an instant, the aura inside the alchemy furnace turned into several streams, growing more and more as they surged like a flood. These materials weren't as durable as the main root, and soon, they were completely transformed into pure energy. At this time, the main root's impurities were completely refined, becoming as soft as mercury. It was placed horizontally in the middle of the alchemy furnace, emitting a strange light. Tang Zheng formed a seal with his hands, and with a few whooshing sounds, he sent several seals into the alchemy furnace. In an instant, the seals merged with the main root, and it was as if the main root had a suction force, absorbing the pure energy spiraling around the alchemy furnace. Hua! A brilliant light burst out from the main root, as if it was alive, gently floating up. The relief carvings on the walls of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace became more and more vivid, directly flying out from the walls and into the alchemy furnace. Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he couldn't help but recall the scene when he was refining the hidden profound sword. The hidden profound sword had the ability to absorb souls, and the souls on the alchemy furnace were almost completely absorbed by the hidden profound sword. Could it be that the main root also had this ability? His heart trembled, and he became cautious. He didn't want his 9 revolving alchemy furnaces' soul to be sucked away, as that would cause the furnace's grade to drop. Now that the furnace's spirit had not been found, if the spirit was sucked away, then how could the 9 revolving alchemy furnace be called a saint tool? There was no way to avoid it being downgraded. He didn't want to see this scene. The spirits of the relief sculptures danced around the main root, exuding a soul-stirring demonic power. Suddenly, the spirits let out sharp shrieks and flew towards the main root. Tang Zheng shivered and inwardly shouted, "Don't!" However, these spirits were not under his control, and with a whooshing sound, they flew to the front of the main root. The main root immediately lit up with a dazzling green light, enveloping these spirits. Immediately, the spirits stopped their shrieks, and like a spring breeze, they miraculously calmed down. Tang Zheng looked at this scene in disbelief, not understanding what was going on. Linger didn't know the situation inside the furnace, and blankly looked at Tang Zheng from his eyebrows, as if something had happened. Her heart involuntarily hung up as she really wanted to ask what was going on, but in the end she gave up as she did not dare to disturb Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng frowned as he solemnly stared at the inside of the pill furnace. The spirit in the green light had all calmed down, and each of them emitted a different kind of light. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he stared closely at one of the spirit essences. This spirit essence was especially eye-catching because it emitted the most intense and dazzling light. Originally, the difference between the spirits wasn't big, but once they were enveloped by the green light, the difference was very obvious. Tang Zheng's eyes gradually lit up, because he realized that there were differences between the spirits, and the strength of the green light represented the strength of the spirit. Among all the spirits, whose spirit was the most powerful? Without a doubt, it was the 9 revolving pill furnaces tool spirit, which was the most powerful existence among all the spirits. Tang Zheng had always been trying to figure out which spirit was the tool spirit, but he had never found any clues, and unexpectedly, the green light of the main root helped him figure it out. He couldn't contain his joy, and firmly stared at the spirit. Its body was a mass of chaos, and it didn't have a clear appearance. There were other similar spirits, so it wasn't strange at all, and Tang Zheng hadn't noticed it before. He never thought that the 9 revolving pill furnaces tool spirit would be this mass of chaos. He couldn't wait to grab it. In the end, he suppressed the impulse in his heart, and only firmly locked onto it with his divine sense. Even if the green light disappeared, it wouldn't be able to escape. Of course, Tang Zheng also finally understood that the Tree of Life's green light wasn't absorbing the spirits, because these spirits weren't sucked away, and it seemed to be a natural reaction. The spirits gradually rose, and little by little flew to the mouth of the pill furnace, and then broke free from the green light's binding, and flew back to the pill furnace's wall. But Tang Zheng keenly discovered that the spirits on the pill furnace's wall were more active, and more spiritual. This was an unprecedented change and made him shocked. Could this be the effect of the green light? He guessed correctly. The Tree of Life was equivalent to the mother of all creation, and could improve the environment and spiritual energy between heaven and earth. The green light it emitted had a very strong spiritual nature, and could even awaken the spiritual nature of other species. These spirits were shrouded in the green light, and their spiritual nature greatly increased, so when they returned to the pill furnace, the spiritual nature of the spirits increased, and it could be seen with the naked eye. Tang Zheng looked pensive, and gradually understood the secret. Suddenly, the way he looked at the main root changed. Originally, he only wanted to refine it into an offensive magic weapon, but now it seemed that his vision was too short. This magic weapon had potential and power that he didn't expect. He couldn't help but look forward to it. After refining the main root, what kind of power would it have? The green light of the main root gradually calmed down, and completely shrunk, converging on the main root. Every time it shrunk a little, the green of the main root became more obvious. When the green light had completely shrunk into the main root had become a lush green, and was full of vitality. A strong spiritual energy was emitted from the main root, and filled the 9 revolving pill furnace. Even in the outside world, this spiritual energy could be clearly felt. Ling Er was stunned, and looked at the 9 revolving pill furnace with pleasant surprise. She had already seen through the clues, and couldn't help but reveal a look of longing and anticipation. Tang Zheng understood that the time had come, and with a shout he raised his hands, and the pill furnace began to rotate faster and faster. In an instant, the pill furnace was only left with a ball of light, and there was no way to distinguish the actual appearance of the pill furnace. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed, and with his hands forming a seal, he quickly sent a few hand seals into the pill furnace, and the pill furnace came to an abrupt stop, as if it had hit the brakes, and immediately stopped rotating. Success! Tang Zheng beamed with exultation, raised his hands high, and shouted, "Come out of the furnace!" A green light slowly rose from the pill furnace. In an instant, the green light filled the entire room. A burst of spirit qi gushed out like a spring, filling the entire room in an instant. Two pairs of eyes coincidentally looked at the mouth of the pill furnace, full of expectation. The main root gradually revealed its true appearance, but compared to its original appearance, it had already undergone earth-shattering changes. To read the latest novel, please visit Chapter 1649. The main root was verdant and about 3 meters long. It was curled into a ball and had 3 sane inscriptions running through it. It was particularly eye-catching. Tang Zheng saw the 3 saint inscriptions at a glance and could not help but cry out in surprise. It was exactly the same as when the hidden profound sword was refined. It also had 3 extremely simple saint inscriptions. The main root was indeed an excellent material for refining magic treasures. It had actually refined a saint artifact with 3 saint inscriptions in one go. Ling Er also noticed this, and she couldn't help but cover her mouth. Her eyes were full of surprise and joy. Tang Zheng could feel the surging power of the main root. This power was very different from ordinary magic treasures. Not only was it offensive, but it also had other attributes. The green light on the surface of the main root was filled with this attribute. He immediately recalled the changes in the spirit essences. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be that its other attribute was this? It could awaken, or increase the spirituality of the spirits. Tang Zheng waved his hand, and the main root flew to him. The main root shook its head and wagged its tail. It was very intelligent because it was a saint artifact. It had a tool spirit and naturally had its own consciousness. Tang Zheng grabbed the main root. The main root had already been refined, so he did not have to worry about the previous rebound. He easily grabbed it. However, the main root did not have much intimacy with Tang Zheng. Instead, it extended to Ling Er and gently touched the back of her hand. It seemed to be very close to her, as if she had refined it. Ling Er widened her eyes in surprise. She extended the back of her hand and allowed it to touch her. It was as if their hearts were connected. Tang Zheng looked at this harmonious scene and could not help but laugh. The main root was refined by his hands, but it did not have much intimacy with him. Instead, it was very close to Ling Er. He was not jealous of Ling Er. His eyes shone as he pondered. He quickly figured out the reason. The tree of life was equivalent to the Mother Earth. Ling Er's original form was a 100-year-old ginseng, which was also a plant. It had a mysterious commonality with the tree of life, which led to a natural closeness between the two. Moreover, Ling Er had previously established a mysterious connection with the main root. Even after a period of careful refinement, and the main root had turned into a magic treasure, the mysterious connection between the two did not weaken. Instead, it strengthened. Ling Er was so happy that she was like a little girl, almost dancing with joy. She looked at Tang Zheng and said excitedly, "Master, look at how interesting it is." Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You're the only one who's close to it. The others don't have this kind of luck." Ling Er stuck out her tongue playfully. "Ling Er, since it's already a magic treasure, it must have a name. It's your magic treasure, so you should give it a name," Tang Zheng said. Ling Er hesitated and said, "I don't have much knowledge. How would I know how to give it a name?" "Master, you can give it a name." Tang Zheng shook his head and said, "It will definitely want you to give it a name. Don't decline." Ling Er stared at the main root. After thinking for a while, she reluctantly said, "All right then. If I don't give it a good name, Master won't laugh at me." Tang Zheng smiled faintly and encouraged her with his eyes. Ling Er thought for a while. Her eyes shone and she said, "Got it. Since it's my magic treasure, then let's call it Heavenly Spirit Whip." "Master, what do you think?" Heavenly Spirit Whip. Tang Zheng softly repeated it a few times. After thinking for a while, his eyes gradually lit up. He looked at Ling Er with a smile and praised, "Not bad. Ling Er, you're still so humble." Your naming skills are top-notch. Linger shyly lowered her head and said, Master, you're overpraising me. I'm not as strong as you say. The heavenly spirit whip also knew that it had a name. It happily touched Linger's hand, as if it was thanking her for giving it a name. Linger's hand was itchy. She couldn't stop giggling. Her smile was as bright as the spring sun. The name bestowment is complete. Now let's drip blood on it to recognize you as its master, Tang Zheng said again. Linger nodded her head. Her expression became serious. She knew that this was the most important step. It was the most important step for the heavenly spirit whip to truly become her magic treasure. She stretched out her finger and activated her chi. A drop of blood gathered at her fingertip. Drip. The drop of blood landed on the heavenly spirit whip. A small flower of blood appeared. However, the drop of blood did not fall. It was immediately absorbed by the heavenly spirit whip. A red line began to move around the heavenly spirit whip. Wherever it passed, a red line appeared on the heavenly spirit whip. It was just like a human's blood vessels. Boom. A green light surged out from the heavenly spirit whip and spread in all directions. Ripples appeared in the air one after another. Tang Zheng looked at this scene in surprise. The movement caused by the drop of blood recognizing its master was too big. It was far beyond his expectations. It was precisely this huge movement that showed how extraordinary the heavenly spirit whip was. He opened his eyes wide, unwilling to miss a single detail. The movement caused by the drop of blood recognizing its master was far more than that. The green light on the heavenly spirit whip became brighter and brighter. In the end, it transformed into pieces of green leaves. Soon, the heavenly spirit whip was covered in green leaves. It was like a vine covered in green leaves. The green leaves looked green and harmless. However, Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He could see the danger from the green leaves. If I were to be swept by the green leaves, I'm afraid the taste won't be good at all. Tang Zheng pondered. The heavenly spirit whip seemed to come alive. A powerful force shot out and broke free from Tang Zheng's large hand. It automatically flew into Ling Er's hand. Immediately Ling Er was also enveloped in the green light. Her eyes revealed a trace of doubt, but in an instant, it burst out with a pleasantly surprised expression. Then, she closed her eyes, like an old monk in meditation. This, the heavenly spirit whip is actually returning the favor to Ling Er. It seems that she has benefited greatly. I'm afraid her cultivation will improve. Tang Zheng muttered to himself. The heavenly spirit whip was indeed returning the favor to Ling Er. Its green light could increase the soul's spirituality. Naturally, it could also increase Ling Er's spirituality. As Ling Er's spirituality increased, her cultivation naturally increased by leaps and bounds. Her true qi also soared. Ling Er's complexion was like water. She quietly closed her eyes and quietly felt the changes in her body. Under the green light, her mood was particularly tranquil. She was neither sad nor happy. She forgot about everything. Time passed by minute. Finally Ling Er opened her eyes. Her eyes were bright and clear. Her eyes were like the purest water in the world. Ling Er originally had a pure heart. Later, after experiencing the world of mortals, she was affected to a certain extent. Her heart was not so pure. However, when she received the return favor from the heavenly spirit whip, the trace of filth in her heart was cleansed without leaving a trace. She was restored to an unprecedented purity. Just by looking at her eyes, it seemed to be able to purify one's soul and wash away the darkness in one's heart. Tang Zheng looked at her eyes. A loud sound rang out in his heart. Then, his heart suddenly became free of distracting thoughts. Xitigarbha's voice rang in his ears. A mysterious and profound Buddhist nourishment silently penetrated into his body and mind. Originally, he recited many times, but did not completely understand the exquisite Buddhist Dharma. At this moment he automatically understood it. Chapter 1650. The golden light enveloped Tang Zheng's entire body and gradually turned into a golden kasaya. Tang Zheng's eyes also emitted a golden light, solemn and dignified. Everyone, please search for the most complete novel. He couldn't help but recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Lines of Sanskrit flew out of his mouth and filled the large room. Linger opened her eyes, unable to contain her joy. This was because her cultivation had soared to the heavens. It was as if she had an epiphany. She broke through 2 levels in a row and reached the 3rd level of demigod realm. Linger didn't even have time to digest her joy when she saw the miraculous scene happening to Tang Zheng's body. She was immediately dumbstruck. Looking at the Sanskrit characters, she had a very peaceful feeling. It was exactly the same feeling she had when the heavenly spirit whip was feeding back to her. Tang Zheng slowly opened his eyes. The Sanskrit characters in the room flew into his body with a whoosh and disappeared without a trace. The golden kasaya on his body also disappeared. However, a golden bead condensed in the palm of his hand. It was as if it was a real object. He lowered his head and looked at the golden bead in his hand thoughtfully. He muttered to himself, "Buddhist bead, what an unexpected surprise." There was a Sanskrit character on the Buddhist bead. It seemed to be tightly attached to the Buddhist bead. After hearing his words, it suddenly lit up with a golden light. This golden light was the Buddhist light. Once it came into contact with the golden light, there was a feeling of calmness. Good stuff. Tang Zheng wanted to carefully study the use of this Buddhist bead. Dizong of Goguryeo didn't tell him that the Kshitigarbha Sutra could condense Buddhist beads. This was all his opportunity, and he needed to explore it himself. Of course, all of this was thanks to Linger. If it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have had an epiphany of the Kshitigarbha Sutra. Naturally, he wouldn't have been able to condense Buddhist beads. He put the Buddhist beads into Sumeru world and looked up at Linger. He said, "Linger, thank you." Linger looked at him in confusion. She asked, "Master, why are you thanking me?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You've helped me a lot." Linger blinked, not fully understanding. "Master, what is that golden pearl?" Linger asked curiously. "Those are Buddhist prayer beads. They are extremely exquisite. I still need to study them carefully." Tang Zheng explained. His gaze shifted slightly and fell on Linger's heavenly spirit whip. The green leaves on the heavenly spirit whip had already disappeared, leaving only its bamboo-like body. Tang Zheng said meaningfully, "Linger, the heavenly spirit whip was refined from the main root of the tree of life, so it is quite different from ordinary magic treasures. You have to explore it more." Linger nodded heavily and revealed a happy expression. "I understand. Thank you, Master, for refining such a good treasure for me." After saying that, the heavenly spirit whip also shook, as if it was connected to her mind, and also felt her joy. "Linger, you go out first. I still need to study the 9 revolving alchemy furnace." Linger nodded and said, "Master, you do what you need to do. I will go out first to tell them the good news." After saying that, she skipped out like a happy spirit. The room became quiet. Tang Zheng looked at the 9 revolving alchemy furnace in the middle of the room. With a wave of his hand, the 9 revolving alchemy furnace flew in front of him. The spirits were completely still and no longer emitted light. They were like reliefs engraved on the walls of the alchemy furnace. If one were to use the naked eye to identify the spirit of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace, they would not be able to tell which spirit was the 9 revolving alchemy furnace's spirit. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up into a smile as he said, "You can forget about hiding now. Come out, artifact spirit." Tang Zheng circulated his energy, and a black hole appeared in the center of his palm. He aimed it at the spirit on the walls of the alchemy furnace. Wang. It was like poking a hornet's nest. The spirit on the walls of the furnace became restless and rays of light burst out from the walls of the furnace. "You want to run? You won't be able to." Tang Zheng activated the swallowing heavens technique, targeting only the artifact spirit's soul. He firmly locked onto it and roared, "Come out!" So, the spirit was unable to resist the swallowing heaven technique's power. It separated from the walls of the furnace and soared towards Tang Zheng, heading straight for the black hole in his palm. The spirit sensed danger and struggled non-stop. However, how could it be a match for the swallowing heaven technique? All of its struggles were futile. "Stop!" Tang Zheng shouted. The spirit stopped in his palm and the black hole disappeared. The spirit emitted light and struggled in his palm, but it was unable to escape from his 5 fingers. Tang Zheng gently comforted it. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. You are the spirit of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. I am only returning you to your rightful owner, and truly merging with the furnace. So, with that, he flipped his palm and the spirit fell from his palm. However, it was unable to escape and was slapped into the furnace. Wang. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace had already been activated by Tang Zheng, and released a ray of light that firmly bound the spirit, making it unable to escape. The spirit crashed left and right. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace seemed to have been hit by a powerful force, and let out a series of banging sounds. You're so restless. I'll tame you in a moment and make you obedient. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. He quickly circulated his energy and resonated with the 9 revolving alchemy furnace, driving the spirit down bit by bit. Gradually, the spirit began to change. It was as if a person had stripped off their outer clothes and revealed their true appearance. The spirit was no longer a chaotic mass. Instead, it turned into the shape of an alchemy furnace. It was exactly the same as the 9 revolving alchemy furnace, but it was a miniature version. Tang Zheng found it interesting and could not help but laugh. So this is your true appearance. You really hit it well. After a slight pause he roared, Fuse. As soon as his voice fell, the spirit fell to the bottom of the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. With a flash of light, the spirit sank bit by bit into the furnace. Not long after, it completely disappeared and fused with the furnace. Wang. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace flew into the air and spun incessantly, releasing rays of light that illuminated the entire room. Tang Zheng put down his hands and removed his control over the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. Now that the fusion was complete, the rest was up to the 9 revolving alchemy furnace. The alchemy furnace spun too quickly, causing the airflow in the room to become chaotic. It created a whirlpool like a tornado. Tang Zheng slightly narrowed his eyes as he witnessed this magical scene. The 9 revolving alchemy furnace was truly unique. Even the spirit of the furnace was separated from the main body. He had to spend a lot of effort to make the 9 revolving alchemy furnace into a true saint artifact. As the wind died down, the 9 revolving alchemy furnace gently floated to the ground. The rays of light on its body had almost completely disappeared. Tang Zheng reached out and grabbed the edge of the furnace. Boom! A clap of thunder sounded in his head, and then a voice appeared in his mind. Master! The spirit of the furnace respectfully called out. Tang Zheng smiled in satisfaction and sighed with deep meaning. Hearing you call me master is not easy. The spirit of the furnace fearfully said, Master, this is a necessary process. Because the 9 revolving alchemy furnace fused with too many spirits, the spirits interfered with each other, resulting in this situation. No need to explain, I am not that narrow-minded. Now that you have become a true saint artifact, it will be easier for you to refine magic weapons and pills. Tang Zheng waved his hand. Naturally, he would not lower himself to its level. Yes, as long as Master gives me the materials, I can automatically refine pills and magic weapons. Automatically refine. Tang Zheng's eyes widened. Chapter 1651. Once the 9 revolving pill furnace could automatically refine pills and magic treasures, there was no need for Tang Zheng to worry about it. He directly handed the raw materials to the 9 revolving pill furnace, and only needed to wait for the finished product. He was completely freed and had time to do other things. Moreover, everyone was in urgent need of pills and magic treasures, and the 9 revolving pill furnace's attributes solved his urgent need. I will immediately send people to search for various materials, and give you the corresponding pill formulas. First, help me refine a batch of pills. The people around me need these pills to increase their cultivation. Tang Zheng said impatiently. The weapon spirit said, Master, there is something I haven't told you yet. I know many pill formulas, so you don't need to give me the pill formulas. As long as you need any pill, I will refine it for you. There is such a good thing? Tang Zheng was shocked and ecstatic. Then in your pill formulas, which pill can increase my cultivation the fastest? This naturally belongs to the wall-breaking golden pill. The weapon spirit replied. Tang Zheng had never heard of this pill before and asked curiously, what is so special about this pill? On the path of cultivation, you will encounter many obstacles. Each obstacle is like an obstacle in front of you. Only by breaking through these obstacles can you advance by leaps and bounds. The wall-breaking golden pill is a miraculous pill to break through the obstacles, allowing a person's cultivation to increase rapidly. The weapon spirit replied. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and said, "Then I will give you the materials. You can refine this wall-breaking golden pill for me. The more the better, the faster the better." "No problem." The weapon spirit was eager to give it a try. Tang Zheng left the room, and everyone's gaze immediately shifted from Linger to him, staring at him with burning eyes. Tang Zheng immediately ordered the Witch Clan elder to purchase the materials needed by the artifact spirit. The Witch Clan elder was proficient in medicine, and gradually heard some of the profoundness of it. He asked thoughtfully, "Are you going to refine pills?" "Yes, the weapon spirit of the 9 revolving pill furnace has been found. It can refine pills on its own, and this wall-breaking golden pill can quickly increase everyone's cultivation. These things are the raw materials for refining the wall-breaking golden pill," Tang Zheng patiently explained. Breakthrough golden core? Quickly improve his cultivation? Everyone was shocked and couldn't help but cry out in alarm. They had never heard of this kind of pill before. This was simply a heaven-defying existence. If it could increase one's cultivation so quickly, then what was the point of arduous cultivation? Cultivation didn't seem to be that difficult anymore. In other words, it was unattainable. In addition, there was also the inner demons. The elder of the sorcerer tribe immediately thought of the most important point and said worriedly, "Increasing your cultivation level quickly is naturally something that everyone is happy about. It is also something that everyone dreams of. However, the inner demons are an insurmountable barrier in cultivation. If you increase your cultivation level too quickly, the inner demons will also become an unprecedented obstacle. This will lead to Qigong deviation, and all your efforts will be in vain." The others had a look of deep understanding as they worriedly looked at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng looked around and saw that everyone's expression was similar. It seemed that their thoughts were similar. He mysteriously smiled and said, "So you are worried about the problem of the inner demons. But if I say that I have solved this problem, then do you have any objections about increasing your cultivation level quickly?" Everyone looked at each other. They couldn't figure out the deep meaning of his words. They especially didn't understand where he got the method to solve the problem of the inner demons. Seeing that everyone was silent, Tang Zheng asked, "Do you have any objections?" Tian Chanzi said in a deep voice, "If you can solve the problem of the inner demons and increase your cultivation level quickly, then it is naturally something that everyone is happy to see. But the key point is that the inner demons are not something that can be solved just because you want to." The others nodded in agreement. Tang Zheng couldn't help but laugh and said, "Tian Chanzi, that's for others. Don't you know who I am? How can the inner demons be a problem for me?" Tian Chanzi had a flash of inspiration. He finally understood that Tang Zheng was not a boastful person. Since he had said it several times, then he must have full confidence in solving the problem of the inner demons. So he couldn't wait to ask, "Kid, you are keeping us in suspense. Hurry up and tell us how to solve the problem of the inner demons." Tang Zheng snapped his fingers. A ray of light burst out from his fingers. With a thought, he pointed to the ground. The exorcist mirror flew from the heaven realm to everyone. The exorcist mirror exuded a mysterious aura, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. Pairs of eyes stared at the exorcist mirror. "What is this?" "The exorcist mirror," Tang Zheng said resolutely. "It can completely exorcise everyone's inner demons. Everyone's worries won't be necessary. There won't be any side effects if you quickly increase your cultivation." "Can it really be like this?" Tian Chanzi couldn't help but rush to the exorcist mirror. He walked around it in a circle and clicked his tongue in wonder. Yi Dingdang had a lively personality. With a kick of her feet, she jumped in front of the exorcist mirror. Facing the exorcist mirror, she could clearly see her own appearance in the mirror. Buzz! Suddenly, the world around her disappeared. It was as if she had come to another strange world. This world was very novel. She opened her eyes wide in surprise. This was the world she had fantasized about many times. She had the heart of a chivalrous heroine. So she had always fantasized about herself wielding a sword and wandering the world alone. But this was just a fantasy. In front of him was a river that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was like a silver ribbon that meandered across the land. Hua! A vigorous figure walked on the river and arrived in front of her. She focused her eyes and was instantly mesmerized. Who else could this person be but Tang Zheng? Tang Zheng was dressed like a chivalrous hero. He had a long sword at his waist. His white robes fluttered in the wind, and his eyebrows were like swords and his eyes like stars. Suddenly, a delicate scream rang out. Yi Dingdong's gaze turned. She saw a few bad guys surrounding a girl, intending to molest her. Yi Dingdong's sense of justice instantly exploded. With a delicate shout, she rushed forward and quickly dealt with the bad guys. She reached out and pulled the weak girl up. The girl raised her head. Her beauty was beyond compare. It was Fang Shishir. She was dressed like a lady from a noble family. Tang Zheng also flew forward. But he was immediately attracted by the lady from a noble family, Fang Shishir. He couldn't even bear to blink. When Yi Dingdang saw this, she flew into a rage. Her face flushed red and her breathing quickened. Her aura and cultivation showed signs of going berserk. Yi Dingdang had experienced so much because of the exorcist mirror. But in the eyes of others, she seemed to be in a daze, staring at the exorcist mirror without moving. There was one person who was different. That was Tang Zheng. He was the owner of the exorcist mirror. Everything that Yi Dingdang saw was clearly presented in his mind. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1652. Tang Zheng's head thumped. He had not expected this at all. He had not expected that becoming the owner of the exorcist mirror would have such an effect. But after seeing everything that Yi Dingdang had experienced and how it was related to him, his heart trembled and waves of emotions surged. Seeing that Yi Dingdang was about to completely fall into the illusion and lose her mind, Tang Zheng hurriedly activated the exorcist mirror. Although the exorcist mirror could expel a person's inner demons, it also had a drawback. If a person fell into the exorcist mirror's illusion and did not have enough luck or strength, they would not be able to walk out of the illusion. Only by walking out of the illusion unscathed would one be able to completely dispel one's inner demons. If one fell into the illusion, one would be consigned to eternal damnation. If Yi Dingdang relied on her own luck, it was still unknown whether she would be able to break through the illusion and truly expel the inner demons. Since Tang Zheng was the owner of the exorcist mirror, he could naturally make everything simple and did not need to take such a huge risk. Whether others could successfully expel their inner demons was all up to him. Thus, with a thought, the exorcist mirror flashed and a ray of light shot out from the mirror, landing on Yi Dingdang's head. Yi Dingdang was suddenly startled. Her originally restless Zhen Qi gradually calmed down, and her eyes became clear. Her eyes were bright and full of spirit. In the illusion, Tang Zheng held her hand, causing her heart to beat like a little deer. She was extremely bashful. She slowly raised her head and looked at Tang Zheng in high spirits, only to find that Tang Zheng was looking at her tenderly. Her original anger vanished like smoke in thin air. Although Fang Shishir was still by her side, she did not stir up the anger in her heart. Tang Zheng's hands and eyes seemed to have a magical power that made her forget her jealousy, leaving only sweet happiness. Kacha. A crisp sound rang from the bottom of her heart. This was the sign of the inner demons shattering. She slowly closed her eyes, and only happiness remained in her heart. The illusion disappeared, and she walked out of it completely. The demon in her heart was gone. When she opened her eyes again, they were much clearer, and they were filled with more spirituality. Everyone looked at her in surprise. From her reaction just now, everyone could already see the clues, so when they saw her wake up, they were very curious. What did she experience and what did she gain? Tian Chanzi was deep in thought. He looked into her eyes and asked, "Dingdang, did your inner demons disappear just like that?" He had already seen some clues, but he wasn't sure. He was skeptical. Yi Dingdang was the one who knew her body the best. She beamed with joy and nodded. "It's true. My inner demons have been exorcised." She paused for a moment, as if digesting this great joy, and then said, I don't have to worry about going berserk on the road of cultivation in the future. When the others heard this, they looked at her enviously. This was something that many people dreamed of. Even Tian Chanzi was envious. He couldn't wait to say, "Brat, hurry up and use the exorcist mirror to expel my inner demons." "Don't worry, everyone has a chance. I will expel each of your inner demons. Then, after the wall-breaking golden pill is refined, you can use the pill to quickly increase your cultivation. In the future, when you face powerful enemies, you will also have a stronger fighting strength." Tang Zheng comforted. Everyone suppressed the idea of competing with each other. Instead, they modestly declined and gave the opportunity to expel the inner demons to others first. "I will work hard now and expel all of your inner demons one by one." For the next few days, Tang Zheng continuously expelled the inner demons for others. Even the inner demons of the witch tribe warriors were completely expelled. Once the inner demons were gone, they couldn't wait to cultivate. All kinds of materials to refine the wall-breaking golden pill were also collected. They were all handed over to the 9 revolving pill furnace by Tang Zheng. Then, when he had expelled everyone's inner demons, it was time to open the furnace and take out the pill. Many people gathered in front of the 9 revolving pill furnace. Everyone had witnessed the miracle of the 9 revolving pill furnace refining pills by itself. They were all amazed and naturally wanted to witness the scene of the furnace opening and taking out the pill with their own eyes. Moreover, the wall-breaking golden pill was closely related to them. They couldn't wait to try it out. The 9 revolving pill furnace stopped spinning and slowly fell from the air to the ground. Boom! A loud sound came from the inside of the alchemy furnace as a mystical fragrance wafted out of the furnace and filled the entire room. It was refreshing and intoxicating. Then, a golden light slowly rose from the furnace. Then, a large amount of golden light flew out of the furnace. It was as if everyone was wearing a layer of golden clothing. Under the eyes of the crowd, the golden pills were like candied haws. They lined up in a row and were displayed in front of everyone. Wow! Sounds of exclamations rose and fell. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared at this scene. They sighed in their hearts. "This is the wall-breaking golden pill, ah! It is really extraordinary. No wonder it has such a big effect. It's a success." Tang Zheng looked at this scene and said with a hammer of the hammer. "Oh!" Cheers resounded through the sky. Everyone's eyes were shining. They couldn't wait to take the wall-breaking golden pill and test its effects. Porcelain bottles flew out from Sumeru World and appeared out of thin air. The wall-breaking golden pills automatically flew into the bottles and soon, there were many bottles. This is the result of the first refining. Next, we will continue to refine more. These wall-breaking golden pills will be distributed first so everyone can work harder on their cultivation. Tang Zheng said in a clear voice. "Yes." Everyone responded in unison and fondled the porcelain bottle lovingly. Tang Zheng looked at the 9 revolving pill furnace and thought to himself that after fusing with the tool spirit, it really did have an extraordinary effect. Even though it could refine pills on its own, it did not need anyone to take care of it. Tang Zheng had too many things to do. He couldn't spare time, so this matter had to be handed over to someone else. His eyes swept over the crowd and shook his head. There was no suitable person among these people. Suddenly, he had an idea. A figure flashed in his mind, and the corner of his mouth rose. He secretly said, "There is no one more suitable than him." The next day, a travel-worn person rushed over from outside. He couldn't hold back his surprise and came to Tang Zheng. "Master, what instructions do you have for me?" The king of medicine was hale and hearty. He had white hair and a youthful complexion. He had a sage-like demeanor, and his temperament was more profound and mysterious than before. Since Tang Zheng's cultivation had become more profound, he had become accustomed to the king of medicine worshipping him as his master. He knew that this was an opportunity between the two of them. He should go with the flow and not care about the so-called secular rules. "King of medicine, I have a task for you. I need to refine many pills, but I can't spare time, so this task falls on you. But you don't need to do too much. You just need to take care of the furnace, and it will refine pills on its own." Tang Zheng said and pointed to the 9 revolving pill furnace. The king of medicine had long known that Tang Zheng had a treasure that could refine pills. He had always wanted to have a chance to study it, but he didn't dare to rashly raise this suggestion. He never thought that his dream would come true today. Although this was equivalent to the work of an alchemy apprentice, which was not in line with his identity as the king of medicine, he felt as if he had found a treasure and was overjoyed. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1653. The king of medicine took over the job of guarding the pill furnace and became an alchemy boy, but Tang Zheng did not treat him unfairly. He learned many secret recipes from the tool spirit and taught them to the king of medicine one by one. The king of medicine acted as if he had received a treasure. While guarding the pill furnace, he carefully studied the recipes and compared them with the actual refining process of the 9 revolving pill furnace. Gradually, he gained more knowledge and experience. Tang Zheng became a hands-off shopkeeper, but his work was not easy. He had to constantly supervise everyone taking the golden wall-breaking pill. Once there was a problem, he had to solve it in time and protect everyone. Everyone's skills reached a new level every day, and the results were gratifying. Li Xiaotian hurriedly came in front of Tang Zheng and interrupted him, instructing the others. She said in surprise, "Tang Zheng, there's news of the Empyrean fairy's whereabouts." Tang Zheng's expression was calm, as if he was not moved by this news. He lightly said, "Then where is she?" Li Xiaotian looked at him with a strange expression and asked, "Why are you not happy at all?" Tang Zheng gently smiled and said, "I know what you're thinking. This kind of thing cannot be forced, so I did not place all my hopes on her." Li Xiaotian's expression tightened and said, "How can that be? Without her 9 saint body, how can you completely solve the problem of pure yang energy?" Tang Zheng waved his hand, indicating that she did not need to worry about this. He explained, "The effect of extreme yang generating yin can still be maintained for a while, so don't worry." "How can I not worry?" Li Xiaotian anxiously said, but seeing Tang Zheng waving his hand, as if he had made up his mind, she tactfully restrained herself and said, "The Empyrean fairy has gone to the gate of heaven." Tang Zheng thought for a while and was not surprised. She wants to revive the Emperor of Heaven. The gate of heaven is her only hope. Then will she succeed? Let's wait and see. Seeing that Tang Zheng had no intention of going to the Elysium to look for the Empyrean fairy, Li Xiaotian pondered, "He doesn't want to force me, but I can't just watch as his life is in danger. If he won't do it, then I'll do it. Anyone in this world can die, but not him." The expression in her eyes changed and gradually became firm. She didn't tell anyone else about this, and they might not be able to help. Since she was Tang Zheng's woman, she should share his burden. Moreover, this was related to his life, so she couldn't be careless. On the same day, Li Xiaotian left the capital. Everyone thought that she had returned to the Li Palace in Dianan, but no one knew that she had gone out to sea, heading straight for the heavenly gate. The gate of heaven was a very mysterious place. Would she be able to find the gate of heaven or reach it safely? All of this was unknown. Tang Zheng didn't know that Li Xiaotian had gone to the gate of heaven. His thoughts were on improving everyone's cultivation, and then choosing the best soldiers to go to the sky beyond. Time passed day after day. More and more wall-breaking golden cores entered everyone's stomachs. Everyone's cultivation base continued to rise. Tang Zheng looked at everyone like he was inspecting soldiers and said in a clear voice, "I have seen everyone's progress in the past few days, and I am very pleased. First of all, congratulations to everyone. Next, these good days will be suspended because it is time to test everyone's results." When everyone heard this, their spirits were lifted and they were in high spirits. They cultivated with all their strength in order to improve their cultivation as much as possible, and then go to the sky beyond with Tang Zheng. "Tomorrow I will go to the sky beyond. I will choose the right person from among you to go with me and experience this adventure. But there is one thing I want to make clear. This trip to the sky beyond is extremely dangerous, and even your life is in danger. If anyone withdraws, stand out now, and I respect his opinion. There is not a single coward in the witch clan, nor is there a single deserter." Yi Yuan pounded his chest and said with an imposing manner, "Yes, there are no cowards in the witch clan. The other Witch Clan warriors agreed. Tang Zheng looked at them with gratification. Yi Dingdang was not willing to fall behind, and volunteered. I'm not afraid either, I want to go with you. After she started, the other girls all patted their chests and wanted to go with Tang Zheng. Even Nana was no exception. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His heart moved. Actually, he had been hesitating whether to let them go together. After all, it was too dangerous this time. Looking at everyone's fearless eyes, Tang Zheng instantly made a decision. His woman would not be a flower in a greenhouse. Without experiencing wind and rain, how could she see a rainbow? Only by experiencing some things would she be able to become stronger. Therefore, this time, he decided to bring some people with him. Only by tempering them 1,000 times would he be able to refine true gold. He would do his best to protect them and shelter them from the wind and rain. But he would also let them experience the wind and rain. Stop fighting. Tang Zheng pressed his hands down and said, I will choose some of you to go with me. I want to go. I want to go too. Pairs of eyes stared straight at him, unwilling to fall behind. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he was unmoved, because he already had a suitable candidate in his heart, and said straightforwardly, This time the people who are going with you are Dingdang, Wu and Qingmei. What about me? The others were all unwilling. Tang Zheng had already considered it, and said, Sure, school is about to start. You have to go to school. What about Dingdang? Doesn't she have to go to school too? I don't have to go to school. Yi Dingdang couldn't wait to express her position. You, Fang Shishir pouted, and looked at her with hidden bitterness. Yi Dingdang stuck out her tongue in embarrassment. Tang Zheng looked at Fang Shishir with a smile. Although the world has changed, but Tang Zheng understood Fang Shishir. School life was a part of her life. Even if she became a cultivator, she never thought of leaving school. Therefore, Tang Zheng would not deprive her of this opportunity, and would let her fulfill her wish. As for Linger and Mu Hongyan, there was no need for them to say anything. Tang Zheng already gave his own considerations. Linger's career was too busy, and that was her dream, so she had no time to spare. As for Mu Hongyan, without her, the business would not be able to operate. Then what about me? I don't have anything to do. Nana jumped up and down, and said excitedly. Tang Zheng looked at her seriously and said, Your task is to study, you're still so young, don't mix with everyone else. Nan bitterly pouted her mouth, as if she could hang an oil bottle on it. She tried to persuade him, rolled around, and acted shamelessly, but was unable to sway Tang Zheng's decision. I want to go too. Tian Chanzi, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Tang Zheng looked at him deeply, and nodded quietly. Although Tian Chanzi did not say anything, Tang Zheng already understood his thoughts. Kingsaman was in sky beyond sky, and he naturally wanted to see his master. This was his long-cherished wish, Tang Zheng knew very well, and naturally would not deprive him of this opportunity. However, Tang Zheng did not see the deep worry and unease in the depths of Tian Chanzi's eyes. Tang Zheng's gaze turned and landed on the Witch Clan. Other than Yi Yuan, who he had already chosen, he also chose a few suitable elite soldiers and formed a large team of more than 20 people. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1654. Above the 9 heavens, this majestic troop stood on the somersault cloud. The somersault cloud turned into a huge white cloud and flew above the blue sky. Pairs of eyes were opened wide as they stared at the void in front of them. They were waiting for Tang Zheng to cast his technique and open the space door. Among them, the red lunar beast was the most excited. This was because it was about to return to its home and see Xiaobai. Tang Zheng's expression was solemn. He activated the law of space and ripples appeared in the void in front of him. In a flash, the space door opened slowly and was clearly displayed in front of everyone. Everyone held their breaths and their hearts were in their mouths. They stared at this magical scene without blinking. Apart from the red lunar beast, the rest had never seen the space door before. They also had no experience of traveling through space. They were curious and expectant. I can't let all of you pass through the space door personally. Therefore, I can only put all of you into the Sumeru world and let you follow me. After Tang Zheng finished his explanation, he waved his hand. The Sumeru world on his wrist flashed and everyone disappeared. They were all put into the Sumeru world. Tang Zheng strode into the space door. The space door closed suddenly and the surroundings were dark. He was familiar with this process. He stopped at a certain spot in the darkness and activated the law of space again. In a flash, the space door opened again. A ray of light appeared in front of him. He stepped out of the door without hesitation. The scene in front of him suddenly changed, and he was once again in the heavens beyond. Whoosh whoosh. The biting cold wind blew towards him, causing his face to hurt. However, Tang Zheng's attention was completely attracted by another scene. Below him was a continuous stretch of cities. This was the Imperial City. Not far away was the core of the heavens beyond's power, the city in the sky. Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air and hurriedly hid in the clouds to avoid being discovered by the enemy. This kind of space travel had a strong randomness. This meant that after traveling through space, one could land anywhere. This time, he had the misfortune of landing in Heavenly King House territory. Hao Tianwang's strength was unfathomable. If Tang Zheng fought against him alone, he might not be able to gain any advantage. It was better to avoid him for the time being. He lowered his head to take a look. Although he was still far away, Tang Zheng's eyesight was amazing. He still found some clues. It seemed that compared to the last time, the defense of the Imperial City was much more lax. There weren't as many soldiers patrolling the streets. He started to have doubts in his heart. He didn't understand why, but he didn't think too much about it. After all, this was the enemy's territory. He had to take advantage of the time before the enemy discovered him to leave safely. Whoosh! The somersault cloud blended in with the clouds in the sky and flew further and further away without leaving a trace. Finally, it was out of the range of the Imperial City. Only then did Tang Zheng relax. Come out! Tang Zheng opened Sumeru heavens, and everyone appeared on the somersault cloud. All of them were filled with curiosity, and they clicked their tongues in wonder. So this is the Outland. Tian Chanzi was filled with emotion. The Scarlet Moon Beast gently stroked little Yu Yu's head. He was so emotional that tears welled up in his eyes. This is your home. We are finally home. Little Yu Yu seemed to understand. She turned her eyes and looked down. Well, look at that mountain. It's actually floating in the air. Yi Dingdang was so shocked that she almost jumped up. She pointed at a floating mountain in the distance and shouted. It was as if everyone's eyes were not enough to take in everything. They were filled with curiosity. Wow, so many mountains floating in the air, how magical. Lu Qingmei smacked her lips and exclaimed in amazement. Marshall was silent, but the expression in her eyes said everything. Tian Chanzi pondered for a moment and said, This is the Outland that an old friend wanted to explore a long time ago. I didn't expect it to be such a scene. We are going to Suicide Valley now. Xiao Bai and his clansmen live there. We will meet up with them first. After that, we will go to the Wildlands to find other righteous people. Tang Zheng introduced. Although Tian Chanzi could not wait to see his own sect, he suppressed his urge and listened to Tang Zheng's arrangement. The Scarlet Moon Beast soared into the sky and jumped off the somersault cloud. Its 4 hooves were like the wind as it flew in the air and rushed forward. Little Yu Yu followed beside it. Her speed was not inferior at all. When the others saw this, they could not hold back. They all rode on their treasures and chased after it. The group went straight to Suicide Valley. All of a sudden, the red lunar beast came to an abrupt halt and stopped in its tracks. It stared blankly into the distance. When the others looked over, they couldn't help but gasp. What is that? Everyone exclaimed. Their eyes were wide open as they looked at the huge creature in front of them. It was hard to describe just how big this behemoth was with words. Looking into the distance, they could not see the end of it. It was as if the sky was completely occupied by this huge creature. Tang Zheng and the Scarlet Moon Beast were not unfamiliar with it. They shouted in unison, Kuan Peng. When they said that, the others immediately remembered a description in the ancient book. The Kuan Peng was so big that it was thousands of miles long. Could this be the Kuan Peng that was described in the ancient book? The ancients did not lie. This was just like what was described in the ancient book. It turned out that this huge creature was not a legend, but a real existence. It was just that it existed in the outland. Looking at everyone's reaction, Tang Zheng had already guessed what they were thinking. He simply explained, "It is what you think." The image of the Kuan Peng was described by Xiaobai's mother and recorded by the later generations. Everyone was enlightened. Tian Chanzi hurriedly asked, "Is this Kuan Peng very powerful?" Tang Zheng could not answer this question because he had never seen the Kuan Peng in action and did not know its strength. The Scarlet Moon Beast said in a deep voice, "Of course the Kuan Peng is powerful, but under normal circumstances, it would not make a move. Moreover, it would not appear. Why would it appear here?" The Red Moon Beast was the most familiar with the situation in the outer realm. After listening to its introduction, everyone's hearts tightened, and a layer of darkness covered their hearts at the same time. Vaguely, they had an ominous feeling. Tang Zheng's face darkened. He stared ahead, which was the direction of the Suicide Valley. He hurriedly shouted, "Go to the Suicide Valley." Whoosh! Everyone returned to the somersault cloud. The somersault cloud flew at its fastest speed, and only a white shadow could be seen flying in the direction of the Suicide Valley. The somersault cloud flew under the Kuan Peng. When everyone looked up, the Kuan Peng was like an endless black cloud, pressing down on everyone's heads. They were not discovered, and they did not care if they were discovered. They had to reach the Suicide Valley as soon as possible. Finally, the Suicide Valley was in sight, but everyone's expression turned cold. Their hearts skipped a beat, as if a huge rock was pressing down on them. Oh no! Everyone turned pale with fright as they cried out. Although it was the first time most of them had come to the Suicide Valley, they could tell at a glance that the situation was not optimistic. The flames of war had already ignited in the Suicide Valley. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1655. The Suicide Valley was no longer the quiet and deserted place that it used to be. Instead, it had become a noisy place. The Scarlet Moon Beast turned pale with fright and impatiently rushed forward, shouting, "I want to protect His Majesty." Tang Zheng did not stop him. At this critical moment, it was too late to stop him. From the looks of it, the current situation was not optimistic. He did not know how Tianwang found out that they were hiding here, but the army actually came to invade. With the disparity in strength between the two sides, there was no suspense about the outcome. Tang Zheng was also extremely worried about the safety of Xiaobai and the others. He shouted, "Somersault Cloud, let's go." Whiz! The somersault cloud carried everyone and rushed into the Suicide Valley at lightning speed. There was an invisible force in the Suicide Valley that restricted the flying ability of the magic treasure, but the somersault cloud was not one of them. It could easily pass through. Just as the Scarlet Moon Beast flew to the edge of the Suicide Valley, it swayed for a while, but it did not fall from the sky. It continued to fly forward, but its speed had decreased by a lot. When Tang Zheng saw this scene from behind, his heart trembled. He suddenly realized that the Suicide Valley had changed and could actually fly freely. This situation was not optimistic. Wouldn't this be more beneficial to Tianwang's attack? The Kuan Peng's huge body had already covered the sky of the Suicide Valley. It steadily stopped in midair and was not affected by the Suicide Valley's restriction on flying. Rumble. An earth-shattering sound came from the depths of the Suicide Valley. It was as if the mountains were shaking. Without a doubt, an unprecedented battle was taking place. Xiaobai was at the center of the battlefield. He did not expect that his Suicide Valley would be attacked, and because he was careless, he was caught off guard by the enemy. For so many years, the Suicide Valley had been safe and sound and had not been discovered by the enemy. Why was it discovered this time? Could it be the aftermath of the trip to the Imperial City? No. During the trip to the Imperial City, the few of them had safely retreated without leaving any traces behind. It was impossible for the enemy to trace them to the Suicide Valley. Xiaobai was puzzled. He could only try his best to deal with the dilemma in front of him. Whoosh! He soared into the sky like an untamed king. Even though the enemy was powerful, he was still fearless, going against the current. The bloodthirsty scepter shone with blood-red light in his hand and rushed towards the Kuan Peng in midair. When the other subordinates saw this scene, they were all extremely excited. They all cheered and followed his footsteps. They soared into the sky and faced the strong enemy. In the sky, a large number of elite warriors were standing on the Kuanpeng. They were all in high spirits and full of fighting spirit, releasing a cold aura. At the very front, Hao Tianwang stood proudly. The strong wind was biting cold, causing his clothes to flutter. However, he remained calm and collected. He lowered his head to look at Xiaobai, who was flying towards him. His expression was indifferent, as if he didn't take him seriously at all. However, he felt a little emotional in his heart. After so many years, it turned out that this group of survivors had actually been hiding in the Suicide Valley. Back then, all of this had started from the Suicide Valley. Now, it seemed that all of this would end in the Suicide Valley. Could it be that this was a cycle of reincarnation? King Wuling stood beside his father and looked at the situation below. He turned his head and looked at the people not far away. In the past, I had always wanted to kill the righteous path. I didn't expect that in the end, I would actually bring me such an unexpected piece of good news. King Wuling sighed in his heart. Not far away, a person was surrounded by Hao Tianwang's elites. He stretched his neck and saw the scene in the Suicide Valley clearly. His heart calmed down, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a smile. He still had some lingering fear in his heart. His back was already drenched in cold sweat, and he had been deliberately suppressing the fear in his heart. If Tang Zheng was here, he would definitely recognize this person. He was actually the son of the Righteous Alliance leader, Bai Mei Daoist. He had met Tang Zheng before. Risking his life this time was a huge gamble. He was betting on his life and his glory and wealth. Of course, it was impossible for him to make such a big decision by himself. This was the result of his discussion with his father, Bai Mei Daoist. Although Bai Mei Daoist was the Righteous Alliance leader, he had been chased by King Wuling's subordinates all these years. He was tired of running for his life, and had long since gotten tired of this kind of life. Now he had no choice but to hide in the savage lands. Although he was the alliance leader, he had never thought of the glory and wealth of the alliance leader. Bai Mei Daoist urgently needed to solve this problem, but he didn't have a good solution. To make matters worse, Tang Zheng's visit had broken his last bit of authority, as well as the last bit of dignity he had tried his best to preserve. They believed that their position as alliance leader was in jeopardy and could be replaced at any time. This was especially so because of the unusual relationship between Kingsaman and Tang Zheng, which caused Kingsaman's status to rise. The last straw that broke their bottom line was the story of Tang Zheng, and the others that Wild Dog had boasted about when he returned. A force that dared to go against Hao Tianwang. Once they joined the Righteous Alliance, the alliance leader would be as small as a shrimp. In addition, Hao Tianwang had awakened. If it was discovered that the Righteous Alliance was related to these people, he would definitely vent his anger on them. At that time, they probably wouldn't be able to hide in the savage lands and would definitely be wiped out. Bai Mei Daoist and his father didn't want to die, but they also didn't want to lose the power in their hands. Thus, after weighing the pros and cons, they made up their minds and sold out Xiaobai and the others. They believed that they would definitely be able to sell for a good price. As long as they reached a deal with Hao Tianwang, they would no longer need to hide in the future, and would enjoy glory and wealth. Bai Mei Daoist was the leader of the Righteous Alliance. With so many eyes watching him, he naturally didn't dare to leave the savage lands. Moreover, he was also worried that after he left, others would usurp his power. Thus he sent his son Riser to take the risk and enter the tiger's den. He arrived at the imperial city and went straight to meet Hao Tianwang. At first, Riser was unwilling to accept this mission. After all, he had experienced the strength of the enemy. He was very afraid that after he revealed his identity, he would be killed without any reason. He wouldn't even be able to see Hao Tianwang's face. White Eyebrows Daoist tried his best to persuade his son, and only after a long time did he manage to convince his son. Riser was very clear about the situation that his father and son were facing. In the end, he simply made up his mind and took a gamble. In fact, before arriving at Suicide Valley, Riser was very nervous. Suicide Valley was accidentally revealed by the Wild Dog. Riser had no way to confirm whether the information was correct or not. If he attracted so many people but didn't find Xiaobai's whereabouts, then he would definitely not have a good end. Death would be the cheapest end. When he looked down from the sky and saw the situation in Suicide Valley, his heart was relieved. The information that the wild dog accidentally revealed was true. This group of people was really hiding in Suicide Valley. He had struck it big this time. Once these enemies were eliminated, what awaited him would be glory, splendor, and wealth. This was what Heavenly King Hao had promised him and his father. He believed that the high and mighty Heavenly King Hao would not lie to him. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1656. Xiaobai was getting closer and closer to the Kuanpeng. Hao Tianwang calmly withdrew his gaze and said to King Wuling, "You go and meet him." He had no intention of making a move at all. Xiaobai could not provoke him to make a move at all. He was waiting for another person, the guy he had only met once, Tang Zheng. Xiaoming had already sold out Tang Zheng. He told Hao Tianwang all the information he knew. Hao Tianwang then realized that the person who had escaped from his hands was actually from another world. He could not help but be somewhat interested. A long time ago, there were also people from other worlds who had reached the heavens beyond heaven, but all of them had been killed by him. He had also thought of tracing back to find out the origins of these people. In the end, he did not get many clues and had to throw it to the back of his mind. He did not expect that after so many years, these people would appear again. Not only that, but there were also many outsiders in the heavens beyond heaven. This made Hao Tianwang very surprised. After King Wuling's explanation, he suddenly understood. It turned out that King Wuling had already found traces of that world. He had even brought all the people from that world to the heavens beyond heaven to make up for the foundation that was exhausted in the heavens beyond heaven. This was the place where King Wuling overtook Hao Tianwang. However, King Wuling did not have a great military strategy like Hao Tianwang. Instead, he thought that he had already captured the strong people from the other world and brought them to the heavens beyond heaven. Moreover, from the strength of these people, there was nothing special about that world. Instead, he did not have the urge to explore it. However, the information that Xiaoming gave was greatly beyond King Wuling's expectations. It made him lose face in front of Hao Tianwang. He repeatedly apologized to Hao Tianwang for his mistakes. This father and son pair were full of curiosity about that other world. Once they got rid of Xiaobai and the others, they were a little impatient to explore that other world. What was so special about this world that it could actually produce a powerhouse like Tangzheng? This was a threat to them, so all dangerous factors had to be eliminated. King Wuling flew forward lightly, casually greeting Xiaobai. Although he didn't seem to put Xiaobai in his eyes at all, in fact he was fully alert. Xiaobai was the only surviving member of the imperial family. After King Wuling took over the imperial city, he claimed to be the new imperial family of the realm beyond heaven. However, when he saw the real imperial family, he didn't dare underestimate them. This was because King Wuling had heard too many legends about the royal family from his father. Subconsciously, he still believed that the royal family was very powerful. King Wuling lightly tapped the air with his finger, and the air instantly dropped to the freezing point. It was as if the air had solidified. A burst of ice appeared out of thin air, transforming into an ice sword that slashed toward Xiaobai. Xiaobai raised his bloodthirst scepter and roared. Streaks of blood shot out from the scepter, wrapping around the ice sword. The ice sword suddenly exploded without any support. King Wuling's expression changed drastically. Although this was only a small test, he already had a deep understanding of Xiaobai's strength. He was no longer the same person as before. Xiaobai's cultivation had increased again, and it wasn't just by a little bit. Xiaobai's treasures were already very powerful, and with the increase in his cultivation, his battle prowess was naturally on a completely different level. The martial spirit king no longer underestimated Little White. With a flash of his body, he flew toward Little White with the force of wind and thunder, bringing about a violent sound of breaking through the air. Wherever he passed, the air froze into ice, and snowflakes floated in the sky. It was as if winter had arrived. This shocking scene attracted everyone's attention. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air, shocked by King Wuling's strength. Shi Ming swallowed his saliva, and his heart almost stopped beating. He couldn't help but rejoice at his wise choice. If he hadn't abandoned the darkness for the light, how could he have blocked King Wuling's attack? He believed that Xiao Bai was no match for King Wuling, and would soon die under this terrifying attack. Xiao Bai stared at King Wuling, who was getting closer and closer. A cold wind blew in his face. He let out a low roar and waved his bloodthirst scepter forward. A burst of flame spurted out from the scepter, traveling along the countless streaks of blood and instantly igniting the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The sky burned as if it had been doused in gasoline. The two streams of air, one hot and one cold, collided, and two arcs appeared in the sky. This was the result of the two streams of air colliding. The two arcs of air continued to collide, and neither retreated. Both of them pressed forward with frightening momentum. The sky seemed to be torn apart by the collision of the two streams of air. Boom! With a loud explosion, the two streams of air couldn't do anything to each other. They exploded and disappeared without a trace. A vacuum appeared in the sky, and the surrounding air instantly filled the vacuum, causing a series of sharp whistling sounds. It formed a turbulent flow, and no one could approach it. If they approached, they would probably be torn to pieces by this power. In the next second, Xiao Bai and King Wuling clashed in close combat. King Wuling's ice sword covered in frost appeared in his hand. However, the frost had no way of covering the sacred inscriptions underneath. The sacred inscriptions were especially eye-catching. A sacred artifact. This ice sword was also a sacred artifact, but compared to the Bloodthirst Scepter, it was slightly inferior. After all, the Bloodthirst Scepter was a divine weapon that Hao Tianwang had coveted back then. Naturally, it was not something that ordinary magic treasures could compare to. The two divine tools collided. All was silent, and the entire world was quiet. Pairs of eyes stared at this scene. Then, in the next second, an intense light almost blinded everyone's eyes. Many people subconsciously closed their eyes. Except for a few people who calmly watched this scene, everyone else was deeply shocked. The ancestor stared at this scene with shining eyes, and was secretly gratified. His Majesty indeed had the blood of the royal family in him. The speed at which his strength increased could be called a miracle. However, Tang Zheng's figure flashed in his mind, and he immediately squeezed him out of his mind. He didn't want to compare himself with such a perverted guy. There was no comparison. Before this, Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai had cultivated together in the Universal Palace together. Xiao Bai had already touched the threshold of the 5th grade of the Mahayana realm. After that, Xiao Bai cultivated day and night in the Heavenly Palace. A day in the outside world was equivalent to several years in the Heavenly Palace. Finally, his cultivation base broke through that threshold and truly reached the 5th stage of the Mahayana realm. King Wuling's cultivation was also at the 5th grade of the Mahayana realm, but his magic treasure couldn't compare to the Bloodthirst Scepter. Therefore, after this all-out attack, the effect immediately became apparent. The outcome was already decided. Poof! A flame spread all the way down from his chest to his lower body. In an instant, he became a living person. The flame spread all over his body at lightning speed. Ah! Chapter 1657. The scar on King Wuling's chest was a ghastly sight. When the others saw it, they couldn't help but gasp. Who was King Wuling? He had been the master of Beyond Heaven for a long time. He was the most powerful person in the Imperial City, the city in the sky. He was above hundreds of thousands of people. However, he had lost to Xiao Bai in front of everyone. The impact was self-evident. The air was dead silent. Pairs of eyes stared at King Wuling without blinking. King Wuling's eyes were dull. He felt like he was in a trance. It was like a dream. It didn't seem real at all. However, the reality was that it was absolutely real. He had really lost just like that. He twisted his neck with difficulty. It was like a door that hadn't been turned for many years. His neck made a cracking sound. He looked at Hao Tianwang nervously. Bang! His heart jumped. It was as if he had fallen from a high altitude into an abyss. He was almost smashed to pieces. From Hao Tianwang's eyes, King Wuling felt a bone-chilling coldness. It was a million times colder than the ice on his body. It was as if his heart was going to be frozen. Just this simple look made him feel like he couldn't move. Hao Tianhuang's face was as calm as water. In fact, his heart was extremely cold. He didn't expect that the son he had always placed high hopes on would lose to Xiao Bai. Didn't this mean that the descendant he had carefully cultivated couldn't compare to the descendant of the imperial family? Hao Tianhuang had always wanted to suppress the imperial family. Everyone knew that the imperial family's bloodline was extraordinary. However, he was still full of confidence and ambition in his own bloodline. If his bloodline defeated the imperial family's bloodline, it would mean that his descendant defeated the imperial family's descendant. That would be the true victory in this plot to usurp power. However, the cruel reality was that he had been slapped hard in the face. He clearly recognized the reality. The descendant he had carefully cultivated was actually inferior to the descendant of the imperial family. The others also looked at the father and son. Although they didn't think so deeply, they all realized that Hao Tianhuang wasn't in a good mood at all. The ancestor and the others caught up to Xiao Bai and cheered. It was an auspicious time to leave the apprenticeship and welcome the first battle. This was an excellent start. The ancestor's eyes were brimming with tears as he excitedly muttered to himself. The late emperor's spirit in heaven. Did you see this? This is your descendant. He defeated the traitor's descendant. The cheers were like steel needles that ruthlessly pierced into the hearts of the enemies. Their faces were gloomy to the extreme, and the anger in their eyes seemed to be about to spurt out. The ancestor glared at Hao Tianhuang and gritted his teeth. You traitor! You betrayed the late king, yet you are still alive. Hao Tianhuang glanced at the ancestor and said, Aren't you still alive? Old man, you didn't die even after hiding all over the place, so how can I die? The ancestor coldly snorted and said, Who's your old man? I was ashamed to be associated with you back then because I didn't see through your ambitions and told the late emperor to be wary of you. However, now that the new emperor has returned, your doomsday is coming. Back then, the two of them were protectors and had the greatest power under the late emperor. They were called the late emperor's left and right arms. Hao Tianhuang wasn't angry at all and glanced at Xiao Bai indifferently. He can't even protect himself, so what ability does he have to threaten me? Hee, I've been looking for you for so many years, but you all hid like rats. I've finally found you this time, so don't even think about escaping. Today is your doomsday. Hao Tianhuang's tone was calm, but no one dared to underestimate the monstrous murderous aura. The ancestor's heart skipped a beat, and his expression changed slightly. He did his best to suppress his emotions and said sternly, Nonsense. His Majesty has already defeated the King Wuling that you nurtured. This is enough to prove everything. If he dies, then all of this will be gone. Heavenly King Hao said calmly. He extended his finger and pointed at Little White and the others. Boom. His subordinates began to shout, and their voices were deafening as they charged towards Little White and the others. Xiao Bai didn't move and remained as still as a mountain. Seeing the enemies getting closer and closer, he finally waved his hand forward. The ancestor's eyes were red as he roared, Kill! Under the order, the ancestor took the lead and rushed out. Mi Wu and the others also rushed towards the enemies without fear. Although the Kuan Peng was high up in the sky and was filled with enemies, they didn't dare to back down. Instead, they pressed forward with indomitable will. The two forces hadn't even come into contact with each other in midair, but all kinds of multicolored magical treasures were the first to clash. Waves of resplendent light exploded and shook the heavens and earth. The explosions never stopped. Xiao Bai and Hao Tianhuang didn't move. Their gazes pierced through the layers of obstacles and clashed with each other in midair. There seemed to be invisible sparks bursting forth. Wherever their gazes passed, there would be a soul-stirring aura and demonic power. The others all retreated and avoided these two gazes. Xiao Bai understood too much from these gazes. That kind of high and mighty arrogance made him very unhappy. He roared loudly and rushed towards the sky. Whoosh! He was like a meteor as he rushed towards Hao Tianhuang. However, Hao Tianhuang stood on the Kuan Peng and didn't move at all. He watched as Xiao Bai rushed in front of him. Wherever Xiao Bai passed by, there would be enemies who tried to stop him. However, They were all struck by the bloodthirsty scepter and fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Hao Tianwang finally reached out his hand and slammed down at Xiaobai. A huge palm appeared out of nowhere and slammed down fiercely. It was as if there were millions of pounds of horrifying power pressing down from the sky. Boom. The air was compressed and exploded. The area around Xiaobai turned into a vacuum. Even the air was forced away. Break! Xiaobai roared and struck out with the bloodthirsty scepter. Streaks of blood flew out from the scepter and whizzed towards the huge palm. Boom! With a loud sound, the streaks of blood exploded one after another. The radiance of the bloodthirsty scepter dimmed. Xiaobai's hands were trembling violently. The immense pain had deeply stimulated his nerves. He almost couldn't hold on to the bloodthirsty scepter and let it fly out of his hands. However, he clenched his teeth and held on. He spat out a mouthful of blood onto the bloodthirsty scepter. In an instant, the scepter exploded with resplendent light. Countless streaks of blood flew out from the bloodthirsty scepter and condensed into a huge barrier, blocking the huge palm. The huge palm stopped and was in a deadlock with the bloodthirsty scepter. Hao Tianwang's eyes flickered with a strange light. He stared at the bloodthirsty scepter and praised with great interest. The bloodthirsty scepter is extraordinary. Obviously, Hao Tianwang had already seen through everything. Although Xiaobai seemed to be able to block Hao Tianwang's attack, it wasn't entirely due to Xiaobai's strength. A large part of the credit was due to the bloodthirsty scepter. It was precisely because of the bloodthirsty scepter's enormous power that Xiaobai's overall strength soared. He was actually able to block Hao Tianwang's attack. Chapter 1658. Hao Tianwang was not frustrated by this situation. He only glanced sideways, and then he casually struck out with his palm again. The sky instantly became bone-chilling cold, and another huge palm appeared. This palm was completely made of ice, and the cold aura was oppressive. Bang! A palm struck another giant palm, and the first giant palm exploded. In the next second, the giant palm fiercely slammed into the blood veins. The blood veins finally couldn't hold on any longer. Even if they were completely entangled, it was still difficult to resist this ferocious attack. Bang! 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 The blood veins broke inch by inch, turning into streaks of bloodlight and disappearing. The light on the bloodthirsty scepter suddenly dimmed, and its power suddenly decreased. However, the power of the giant palm was not limited to this. It quickly pressed down, and the palm fiercely slapped Xiaobai's body. Whitey let out a sharp cry as he raised the bloodthirsty scepter with all his might, and he was barely able to disperse the force of the enormous palm. However, he was still like a meteor that tore through the sky as he fell to the ground. Bang! Xiaobai landed at the highest point of the Suicide Valley, on the high ground that Tang Zheng named Flower and Fruit Mountain. A large amount of rocks splashed up, filling the sky with smoke and dust, blocking one's line of sight. After this battle, the giant palm's power was exhausted, and it turned into wisps of cold air that dissipated in the air. Hao Tianwang did not pursue the victory, as if he did not even look at the smoke and dust that filled the sky, and did not care about Xiaobai's life or death at all. He turned his gaze and searched for another figure in the crowd, a figure that he was very curious about, Tang Zheng. However, after looking for a long time, he still could not find Tang Zheng's figure. He could not help but feel disappointed and surprised. Where did this person go? Such a mighty battle, yet the other party did not appear. What was he doing? Hao Tianwang was filled with endless curiosity. Although Wild Dog had inadvertently bragged about the battle in the Imperial City and the situation in the Suicide Valley, he did not reveal that Tang Zheng had already left Sky Beyond Heaven. Wild Dog was not stupid. Tang Zheng was a huge deterrent. If he blatantly told others that Tang Zheng had already left Sky Beyond Heaven, then his bragging rights would be reduced. Naturally, he also subconsciously believed that Tang Zheng was in the Suicide Valley. He vowed solemnly, causing Hao Tianwang to be filled with anticipation, waiting for Tang Zheng to appear. However, when he slapped Xiaobai into the dust, he did not see Tang Zheng appear. He could not help but feel a sense of regret and disappointment. When the ancestor and the others saw Little White fall into the Flower Fruit Mountain and disappear, they were all shocked. Protect His Majesty! The old ancestor roared. The fog and a few of his companions broke through the encirclement and tried to rush to Flowerfruit Mountain to see Little White's true situation. However, how could their opponents let them do as they wished? They quickly blocked their path. There was already a large number of people. Immediately, they completely blocked their path. There was no way to check the specific situation of Flower and Fruit Mountain. When the ancestor saw this scene, he was extremely anxious. His huge body had already been entangled by King Wuling. Although Martial Spirit King had lost to Little White by one move, and even had a shocking scar of humiliation on his chest, his combat strength was still not to be underestimated. He was an existence that most people could not contend against. The ancestor opened his mouth and aimed at King Wuling. There was no sound, but King Wuling immediately frowned. The ancestor was good at sound wave attacks. It seemed like there was no sound, but in reality his ears could not distinguish the sound. Tang Zheng had seen the ancestor use this move before and knew how powerful it was. King Wuling had never fought with the ancestor face to face. Although he was on guard, he did not understand how powerful it was. Swish! He waved the ice sword in his hand and slashed at the ancestor. However, before the sword tip touched the ancestor, an extremely powerful sound wave had already hit King Wuling. This time, it was more powerful than what Tang Zheng had seen. This was because the knot in the ancestor's heart had been untied, and his cultivation had also risen. During this period of time, he had finally broken through the shackles and reached the 5th stage of the Mahayana realm, which was the same as Xiaobai. However, he did not have a divine weapon like the bloodthirsty scepter, so there was no way for him to use such a powerful attack. However, King Wuling was still at a disadvantage because he was caught off guard. The air in front of King Wuling boiled, and with a crack appeared on the ice sword. This scene made King Wuling almost vomit blood. The ice sword was a sacred weapon that had accompanied him for many years, but it was damaged because of this attack. At that moment, he realized that he had underestimated his opponent, which led to this outcome. The ancestor succeeded in one attack, but he did not take advantage of the victory to pursue because he knew very well how powerful King Wuling was. He could only have such an effect because he took him by surprise. Now that the other party was on full alert, even if he took advantage of the victory to pursue, it would not be so easy to succeed. Moreover, he was more worried about Xiaobai's safety. He turned around and rushed toward Huagua Mountain. Stop him! King Wuling seemed to have been humiliated and roared in anger. Several of his subordinates blocked the ancestor's path regardless of the danger. However, how could these people be a match for the ancestor? With a single sound wave attack, their hearts were shattered and they fell from the sky. However, it was precisely because of this delay that King Wuling caught up. The ancestor was extremely anxious. His gaze turned cold as he saw He Yi and shouted, "He Yi, cast a spell and delay them." He Yi was fighting fiercely with the enemy. When he heard the ancestor's voice, he subconsciously took a few steps back and avoided his opponent. Then his eyes turned pitch black, and there was no white in his eyes at all. He raised his hands high and shouted, "Eternal night descent!" The sky darkened in an instant, and the sunlight seemed to have disappeared in a second. Not even the light of the stars could be seen. This was a very mysterious spell that He Yi had created. Although its attack power was not enough, it could confuse the opponent and make them blind. This kind of eternal night descent was different from ordinary night. Even the transmission of light was forbidden. Unless the power was much stronger than He Yi, then the light could be transmitted to a certain distance, and the scene in front of them could be seen clearly. According to He Yi, once he fully comprehended the essence of eternal night descent, he could truly turn the world into an eternal night, immersing the world in darkness forever. Of course, this was only a beautiful wish. If he wanted to achieve this, who knew how long it would take? This was just He Yi's idea. This was the first time King Wuling's subordinates had seen this scene. They were at a loss and lost their opponents, falling into panic. Xiaobai's subordinates had long since adapted to this point. They quickly counterattacked, and most of the enemies in front of them were hit and died on the spot. King Wuling was also too late. He was about to catch up to the ancestor, but he missed. The ice sword lit up with a white light, but it did not shine too far. However, the ancestor's figure had already disappeared in front of him. Interesting, interesting. Hao Tianhuang clicked his tongue in wonder, as if he was very curious about the eternal night descent. Hao Tianhuang changed the topic and said contemptuously, "You want to escape from under my nose like this?" With a wave of his hand, a cold light pierced through the darkness like a firefly in the night. Although it did not completely disperse the darkness, everywhere it passed, the darkness was unable to swallow this cold light. Chapter 1659. In the darkness, the ancestor's scream was particularly ear-piercing. Many people's hearts tightened when they heard it. They all shouted, "Ancestor!" Hao Tianhuang sneered, "Old friend, you're not the same as before. You're only at the 5th grade of the Mahayana realm. How can you contend against me?" His disdain was obvious. Cough, cough. The ancestor coughed violently in the darkness, as if his lungs were about to be coughed out. Hao Tianhuang frowned as he looked at the darkness lingering around him. This divine ability is quite interesting, but it's also a small trick. It's embarrassing in front of me. With that, he stomped down with one leg. Inch by inch, ice spread out from under his feet. In an instant, the space became a world of ice and snow. The air froze and turned into ice. Not long after, the air in all directions turned into a bright mirror, reflecting a dark luster. Crack. With a cracking sound, the darkness cracked inch by inch like ice. Finally, with a rumble, all the darkness shattered, and light illuminated the world once again. Cheers rang out immediately. They shouted, "Mighty Heavenly King Hao!" The eternal night descent had caused Hao Tianhuang to lose many of his subordinates. Naturally, he could not let it be used. When the light descended, Hai was shocked. No one had broken this divine ability so easily. From this, it could be seen that Hao Tianhuang's cultivation was terrifyingly high. Hao Tianhuang locked onto Hai in the crowd and said meaningfully, "So it's you." With that, he grabbed at the air. Although the two of them were quite a distance away, Black Knight felt his entire body tighten. A huge force surged in from all directions, firmly binding him. He had no way to escape. He could not help but panic. Assistant. Fog originally wanted to investigate the situation of Huagua Mountain, but she was completely blocked by the enemy. Even with the eternal night descent, she could not completely shake off the enemy. Thus, when she saw that Evernight's life was hanging by a thread, she made a prompt decision and charged towards Evernight. A mist gushed out from her fingertips, instantly enveloping Hei Yi and the others. This large space became a place shrouded in clouds and mist, making it impossible to see the people on the other side. It was similar to Evernight's descent. Not only that, but the thick fog also had another power. It obstructed Hao Tianhuang's vision and prevented him from locking onto the night. "Let me lend you a hand." The fog whispered in Dark Knight's ears and used its divine ability. Its body also turned into a cloud of fog that enveloped Dark Knight. Bang, bang, bang. A series of explosions rang out from Black Knight's body as the restraints that Hao Tianhuang had placed on his body completely disintegrated. Black Knight finally broke free and retreated in panic with the mist. Although Hao Tianhuang couldn't see the scene behind the fog, he could guess a thing or two. He immediately flew into a rage and waved his hand. A biting cold wind flew out from his palm. Whoosh! A tornado-like cold wind swept away all the fog. The sky was empty, and no one could hide. Hao Tianhuang saw the heavily injured ancestor from afar. His huge body was bleeding profusely, and he was swaying as if he would fall from the sky at any time. Hao Tianhuang was about to take advantage of the victory to pursue, and didn't want to waste time with these people. As for Tang Zheng, who hadn't appeared yet, he simply ignored him. However, before he could move, a figure flew out from below the Kuan Peng and shouted majestically, "Traitor, I'll settle old scores with you today." Hao Tianhuang was stunned. Where did this enemy come from? After taking a closer look, Hao Tianhuang's pupils suddenly shrank, and a trace of surprise and shock flashed through his eyes. He stared straight at the other party and asked, "Why aren't you dead yet?" "Red Moon General." The patriarch's weak voice could be heard, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in everyone's ears. Of course, Most of Hao Tianwang's subordinates had never heard of this taboo name. Most of the people who knew about it were already dead. The Red Moon Beast turned around slightly and looked at the patriarch. He wasn't too surprised, but rather complicated. No words could express his feelings. The Red Moon Beast had already heard about the patriarch's recent situation from Tang Zheng. It turned out that he still had an old friend who was still alive. Old friend, take a rest first. I'll deal with this traitor. The Red Moon Beast was filled with righteous indignation and volunteered. The patriarch said worriedly, "You must be careful." The patriarch had already seen through the Red Moon Beast. Back then, the Red Moon Beast's cultivation was on par with the patriarch and Hao Tianwang's. However, after going through several battles and being forced to travel through space, his cultivation dropped sharply due to his severe injuries. He was no longer the same as before. If the Red Moon Beast had not awakened and had access to Tang Zheng's unique resources, as well as the wall-breaking golden pills that he had consumed before he left, his cultivation would have been even lower. Now the Red Moon Beast was also an expert in the Mahayana realm. However, he was incomparable to Hao Tianwang. The Red Moon Beast was not afraid at all. It stomped its hind legs and turned into a ray of light, charging towards Hao Tianwang. Whoosh! Its sharp tail swept towards Hao Tianwang fiercely. It tore through the air, as if it was going to cut Hao Tianwang in half. Seeing this, the patriarch was secretly delighted. The Red Moon Beast's appearance meant that Tang Zheng was here too. Otherwise, the Red Moon Beast would not be able to travel through space alone. When he thought of Tang Zheng, the stone hanging in the ancestor's heart seemed to fall to the ground. He gradually developed a mysterious sense of trust towards Tang Zheng. However, Hao Tianwang did not think too much about it. He was only curious as to why the Red Moon Beast would appear. He did not do his job well back then, which was why these old fellows were still alive. You're courting death. Since you were lucky enough to escape back then, you should have avoided me forever. However, you took the initiative to appear in front of me. This time, you won't have such a good chance. Hao Tianwang scoffed in disdain. He flicked all 5 of his fingers and 5 icicles blocked the Red Moon Beast's path. Bang! The Red Moon Beast swept its tail and collided with the icicles. Whoosh! A figure jumped up from the Red Moon Beast's back and shot towards Hao Tianwang like an arrow that was released from a bow. It was fast, ruthless, and accurate. Hao Tianwang was a little surprised as he stared at the little figure. He immediately recognized her and said, "You have a child. What a pity. You're going to die." It turned out that little Yu was lying on her father's back and was not discovered by others. She then took advantage of the fact that Hao Tianwang was not paying attention to her and launched an attack. She was trying to catch him off guard and defeat him. However, the difference in their cultivation base was too big. The surprise attack did not work well. On the contrary, Hao Tianwang closed his 5 fingers and grabbed. Little Yu was like a kite with a broken string. She lost her momentum and was quickly sucked towards Hao Tianwang. The Red Moon Beast was shocked and screamed, "Be careful!" However, he did not have the time to save her. Whoosh! Chapter 1660. Hao Tianwang raised his head in astonishment. There was actually someone who could contend against him. Who was it? Little Yaya squeaked twice and revealed a look of surprise. She used all her strength to cooperate with the external force and broke free from Hao Tianwang's grasp. Seeing this, the Red Lunar Beast was overjoyed and immediately rushed forward to protect little Yu. Little Yaya rubbed against Qi Luna's body affectionately. "Who dares to ruin my plans?" Hao Tianwang shouted angrily. A white cloud floated out from under the Kuanpeng. Dozens of people stood on the somersault cloud, and Tang Zheng stood at the front, attracting everyone's attention. Hao Tianwang's pupil shrank. He did not expect the other party to appear at this time. He thought he had left. Hao Tianwang was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he looked at Tang Zheng with interest and said, "You actually dare to show yourself. You are extraordinarily bold." Tang Zheng activated the somersault cloud and got closer and closer to Hao Tianwang and the rest. He did not care about the terrifying aura that Hao Tianwang was emitting. Tang Zheng's face darkened and said, "You want to capture the entire royalty in one fell swoop." How can I not show myself? Hee. If that's the case, then today is the day you die. Hao Tianwang's murderous aura surged as he said sternly. Tang Zheng was unmoved and said, "You want to kill me? It's not that easy. So you brought helpers. But these helpers of yours are only SOSO. I don't see anything special about them." Hao Tianwang looked at the others with disdain and said without a care. Tian Chanzi and the rest saw Hao Tianwang for the first time and were looked down upon like this. They were furious, but there was nothing they could do. They felt a deep sense of powerlessness. This was because Hao Tianwang had the ability to do so. He was like a mountain, while the others were like hills. There was no comparison between hills and mountains. However, they were Tang Zheng's men. How could they tolerate Tian Chanzi's words and actions? They said coldly, "So that's all there is to it? Then I think your men are all there. Besides, do you really think that's all I have?" With that said, the Sumeru world on Tang Zheng's wrist flashed and two figures appeared. One was the four symbols, and the other was the Azura. When these two appeared, their auras were completely different. The auras of the four symbols were almost all restrained, and the Azura's evil aura was not completely neutralized by the Ksitigarbha Sutra, so it showed a very violent aura. Hao Tianwang narrowed his eyes slightly. The way he looked at the four symbols and Azura changed. He was no longer as calm and composed as before. Instead, there was a profound look in his eyes. Tang Zheng took note of Hao Tianwang's minute reactions and said jokingly, "Now you have nothing to say?" Hao Tianwang snorted coldly. Even among his subordinates, these two were definitely top experts. He hadn't expected the other party to come prepared. He had really underestimated them. However, what kind of person was Hao Tianwang? His cultivation was unfathomable. Even though the other party had outstanding experts, he was confident that he had an overwhelming advantage. Victory or defeat we'll see soon enough. Hao Tianwang waved his hand and ordered, "Attack." Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The subordinates, who had long since been restless, rushed out once again. Previously, the descent of the eternal night had caught them unprepared and caused them to lose a lot of people. However, their momentum wasn't dampened at all. On the contrary, the more they fought, the braver they became. Tian Chanzi took the lead and shouted impatiently, "Kill!" With a leap, he pounced forward with the Tai sword. The sword pierced through the enemy at the front. Obviously, the other party had underestimated the enemy. They didn't expect the Tai sword to be a divine weapon. Therefore, in the hands of Tian Chanzi, it could display great power. Looking at the blood spurting out from the enemy's chest, Tian Chanzi's eyes widened. He suddenly realized that the people from the outland weren't invincible. The fact that he could kill the other party with a single sword was enough to prove the problem. Tian Chanzi's confidence was greatly boosted. The others were also greatly encouraged, especially the disciples of the witch tribe who had just entered the battlefield. They didn't panic. They had gone through harsh training. Although it was their first time fighting in the outland, they had long been used to all this. Practice makes perfect. They quickly calmed down and formed an inseparable small group to attack the enemy together. These small groups had a lot of tricks up their sleeves. They secretly formed a formation and were inseparable. Everyone was an indispensable part of it. Therefore, the power of the burst was far greater than the simple combination of a few people. Yi Dingdang, Marshall and Lu Qingmei also huddled together, acting as each other's horns, helping each other and quickly moving towards the enemy. As for Shura and the four symbols, they each formed a formation. Shura raised his Shura saber. A terrifying Yin Qi violently swept out. A few enemies rushed forward and were directly cut into pieces by the Shura saber. The four symbols waved their fists. Their seemingly ordinary fists made it impossible for the enemy to escape. When they waved their fists, they had already firmly locked onto the enemy. The enemy could only activate their magic treasures to meet the fist. However, the four symbols' fists were too heavy. With a loud bang, the enemy's meridians were exhausted and their bones were brittle. They died on the spot. This scene was very encouraging, especially Xiao Bai's subordinates, who were originally in low spirits. After all, after Xiao Bai fell to Huagua Mountain, there was no news of him. They did not know whether he was dead or alive. However, seeing how fierce their reinforcements were, the lofty sentiments in their hearts were stimulated. Kill! The battle cries were deafening. One by one, they rushed over and attacked the enemy fiercely. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng's appearance boosted their morale, allowing Xiao Bai's subordinates to see hope again. Especially when Fog and Night looked at Tang Zheng, they were pleasantly surprised and ashamed. Although Xiao Bai had always vowed that Tang Zheng would definitely return to the Outland. However, many people were skeptical. After all, they did not understand Tang Zheng. They did not think that in the face of such a situation, he would have the courage to return to the Outland. Now this scene in reality taught them a profound lesson. They realized that they had underestimated Tang Zheng. They should have trusted Xiao Bai's judgment. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry to rush out. He was observing the situation, especially the strength of the enemy's cultivation. There was no doubt that there were no weak soldiers under a strong general. Especially after so many years, how Tianwang's subordinates could almost exterminate the righteous path and the demonic path, allowing them to survive in the cracks. This showed how powerful this team was. As expected, there was no lack of great ascension stage experts in this group, but most of them were at the first, second, and third stages of the Great Ascension stage. Only 2 of them were at the 4th stage of the Great Ascension stage. Tang Zheng was surprised. How Tianwang had ruled the Outland for so many years, but most of his subordinates were trash. It did not seem to be in line with his identity. One had to know that when the imperial family ruled the Outland, even the protectors were 8th-stage Mahayana realm cultivators. The difference between the 2 periods was like heaven and earth. From the strength of the cultivation, one could judge the advantages and disadvantages of the 2 periods. Only the stronger the overall strength, the more masters there were. This showed that the world was prosperous. On the contrary, this showed that the world was full of worries. Chapter 1661. The current situation of the sky beyond heaven was caused by Hao Tianwang. Hao Tianwang had taken the throne by plotting to usurp the throne, and he was afraid that others would follow his example. It was precisely this kind of worry that made him not dare to let his subordinates increase their cultivation base unscrupulously. So many powerful divine abilities and profound spells were destroyed by him. This caused the strength of the sky beyond heaven to fall by a large margin compared to when the imperial family ruled. For tens of thousands of years, there had never been a shocking master who could contend with King Wuling and Hao Tianwang. However, this allowed Hao Tianwang to better rule this world, and he had never reflected on the serious consequences of this. This was because he had never thought that he would encounter a very powerful opponent. In the sky beyond heaven, Hao Tianwang was an invincible existence. Even though he had already realized that Tang Zheng's group was not weak, Hao Tianwang was not worried at all. After all, sometimes, in front of absolute strength, just relying on numbers was not very useful. The 4 symbols and Azura's attacks made the others realize their strength, so Hao Tianwang's Grand Ascension stage masters whizzed through the crowd and rushed in front of them. The 2 sides immediately fell into an earth-shattering battle. The other people's battles were also very fierce, and for a time, the rumbling sounds were incessant, shaking the heavens and earth. It was as if the sky was about to be torn apart. However, the Kuanpeng did not move. Its huge body was suspended in midair, as if nothing could shake it. Hao Tianwang stood on the back of the Kuanpeng and did not move. He stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. He was waiting for Tang Zheng to make a move, but an invisible aura pressed down on Tang Zheng, causing Tang Zheng's entire body to tense up. Whoosh! Tang Zheng let out a few heavy breaths, stretched out his right hand, and shouted, "Sword, come!" The hidden profound sword immediately appeared in his hand, and when the sword and palm were grasped, the hidden profound sword immediately burst out with a bright light. Wang! A high-pitched sword cry seemed to pierce the sky and soar into the sky. Hao Tianwang stared at the hidden sword and Tang Zheng with great interest. He clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "Your strength has actually increased again." To be able to increase his Mahayana realm cultivation base so quickly, what a genius! Hao Tianwang recalled his own cultivation process. There was no way he could compare with Tang Zheng. He couldn't help but sigh. Although you are a genius, I will still beat you down to the ground and nip all the dangerous elements in the bud. Hao Tianhuang was filled with killing intent. Whoosh! Tang Zheng soared into the sky, and the sword light completely enveloped his body. He seemed to have turned into a sword as well. Wherever he passed, the sky was torn apart. The hidden mystic sword was wrapped in a terrifying aura that could topple mountains and overturn seas. And in one strike, it was already in front of Hao Tianhuang. Hao Tianhuang didn't even blink as he quietly watched the hidden mystic sword approach. The hidden mystic sword went straight for Hao Tianhuang's forehead. Suddenly, Hao Tianhuang moved, but he didn't have a fierce or terrifying aura. Instead, he gently extended 2 fingers and placed them in front of him. Clang! His 2 fingers were as hard as iron as they firmly clamped down on the hidden mystic sword. The sharp sword edge and the sword light were unable to move forward. At such a close distance, their eyes met. Hao Tianhuang disdainfully laughed and said, "Last time I let you escape, that was an accident. Do you think you will have that kind of luck this time?" Tang Zheng was unable to move the hidden mystic sword. The hidden mystic sword's voice sounded in his mind. "Master, Hao Tianhuang is too powerful. He has already imprisoned me." Tang Zheng was unmoved as he coldly said, "Hao Tianhuang, you want to trap me like this? You think it's too simple." The tip of the hidden mystic sword suddenly lit up with a ray of light. This ray of light grew bigger and bigger, like a scorching sun, rapidly increasing in size. A terrifying power spread out from the tip of the sword. Boom! That ball of light flew out from the sword, and directly flew towards Hao Tianhuang, who was close by. Hao Tianhuang didn't expect that under such circumstances, the opponent still had the power to counterattack. Although he was astonished, he didn't panic. His other hand lightly patted forward. It was incomparably gentle, but it contained a power that could destroy heaven and earth, blocking that ray of light. In the midst of a loud rumbling sound, a group of clouds rose up along with the intense ray of light. It was like an atomic bomb had exploded. A shock wave rose up from between the 2 people and spread out in all directions. In an instant, in the midst of this loud noise, the heaven and earth became silent. Everyone's ears were only left with a buzzing sound. They looked at each other's movements and couldn't hear anything else. The Kuren Prung that had been motionless like a moving fortress finally moved. It moved flatly to one side for a distance before stopping. But the others were not so lucky. Those who were slightly weaker had no way to resist the shock wave. They were scattered everywhere and flew to other places. They were battered and exhausted. Hao Tianhuang and Tang Zheng's eyes were blocked by the intense explosion. There was no way for them to see each other, but they firmly locked onto each other. Whoosh! The hidden mystic sword finally separated from the 2 fingers and danced in the air. It was like stirring up the surface of a calm lake. The sword light danced in a large circle, and an endless stream of sword chi gushed out from the circle, rushing towards Hao Tianhuang. The explosion of light between the 2 people was twisted into pieces by this sword. Then, behind this light, the sword light suddenly arrived in front of Hao Tianhuang. Hao Tianhuang didn't expect Tang Zheng's reaction to be so fast. He shouted, "I'm not going to play with you anymore." After saying that, he pushed his hands forward. A cold air gushed out from his palms. In an instant, the temperature between heaven and earth dropped. This was not comparable to when King Wuling used his supernatural power. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He watched as his sharp sword light was frozen. Layers of frost appeared on the sword light, and then it became a gorgeous scene. The sword light was bright, but it was completely frozen. It was like amber, beautiful and charming. But this was not charming at all to Tang Zheng. He was shocked. He activated the hidden mystic sword and tried to launch a new round of attacks. He had realized that Hao Tianhuang's counterattack was extraordinary. The air in all directions had been frozen. This cold air could not only freeze the air, but also his attacks, sword light, and even himself. He had to break out of the encirclement and escape from this cold air attack. Hao Tianhuang saw through his plan. He sneered and said disdainfully, "Break out of the encirclement? Hee, no one has ever escaped from this world of ice and snow." As soon as his voice fell, the cold air suddenly increased. The air around Tang Zheng completely froze. It turned into blocks of ice at a speed visible to the naked eye. turning into a world of ice and snow. Boom! Man and sword as one, fiercely smashed into the ice, causing the heavens to shake and the earth to shake. However, the ice did not shatter, as if it was an indestructible barrier, causing Tang Zheng to be unable to shake it in the slightest. Tang Zheng separated from the hidden mystic sword. He raised his eyes and looked around. He had been completely sealed in a world of ice and snow. Although he could see the people outside, he had no way to break out of the encirclement. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1662. A world of ice and snow suddenly appeared in mid-air. And it quickly became like that under everyone's eyes. Everyone was deeply shocked when they witnessed this scene. The ancestor knew Hao Tianwang the best. He knew that the ice technique that he had always cultivated was a counter to the imperial family's flame technique. However, the imperial family's divine ability had always been suppressing Hao Tianwang. However, after seeing this scene, the ancestor's confidence was shaken. Even the late emperor might not be able to resist Hao Tianwang. Immediately, the ancestor's heart sank into a bottomless abyss, and his face turned pale. He originally thought that Tang Zheng would be able to surprise and defeat the enemy, or at least have the strength to strike. He never expected that Hao Tianwang would seal Tang Zheng with an overwhelming victory not long after the two sides fought. Could he break through? Although the ancestor hoped so, he did not have much hope. This traitor's cultivation has become so powerful, but my cultivation has been stagnant for so many years. After meeting His Majesty, I had a breakthrough and reached the 5th stage of the Mahayana realm. However, compared to this traitor, I can't compare at all. The ancestor felt ashamed, feeling that he did not have the face to see the late emperor. He could not help but look in the direction of Huagua Mountain, but the smoke and dust had not disappeared yet. He could not see Xiaobai's figure at all, and he did not know whether he was dead or alive. The ancestor was entangled by King Wuling and could not save Tang Zheng at all. However, the 4 symbols were different. They were connected to their master, and immediately realized the danger that their master was facing. Roar! He roared and punched his opponent in front of him. His opponent had already known that the 4 symbols were extremely powerful and could not be defeated, so he quickly dodged to the side. He thought that his plan was foolproof, but there was a problem. The fists of the 4 symbols rapidly grew in size, becoming the size of a mountain. How could he possibly dodge the attack of a mountain? Bang! The mountain-like fist struck the other party. The other party didn't even have time to scream before he was smashed into a meat patty. The 4 symbols turned around and flew toward the world of ice and snow. With a turn of his body, he kicked the ice with one leg. His leg turned into a mountain and quickly pressed down on the ice. One could imagine how terrifying this power was. Kacha! A crack appeared on the ice. The 4 symbols were overjoyed, thinking that the solid ice was about to shatter. However, it was a pity that the solid ice did not shatter. That crack quickly healed, and became an iron bucket again. The 4 divine beasts were stunned for a moment, as if they had not expected that such a powerful attack of theirs would actually be unable to shatter this mere piece of solid ice. Hao Tianwang's expression changed slightly. Looking at the terrifying attacks of the 4 sacred beasts, his mind was not as calm as it seemed on the surface. What kind of divine ability is that? I've never seen it before, but its power is so great. If he continues to use it, the seal might not be unbreakable. Hao Tianwang muttered in his heart. He naturally could not sit by and watch. With a flash, he blocked in front of the 4 symbols and shouted loudly, "Who are you? You actually have such a divine ability?" The 4 symbols only had eyes for his master. Even though Hao Tianwang was powerful, he was not afraid at all. He said in a muffled voice, "I am the 4 symbols, quickly release my master." Hao Tianwang looked at the 4 symbols meaningfully, and said, "You actually acknowledge him as your master. What a waste. If you acknowledge me as your master, I can let bygones be bygones, and can even let you enjoy glory, splendor, and wealth." For the first time, Hao Tianwang extended an olive branch to the 4 symbols in an attempt to recruit him. That was because he was very clear that the 4 symbols was not only powerful, but also had unlimited potential. In particular, The divine ability that he had displayed made even Hao Tianwang very curious. The four symbols was unmoved and said, "How can I acknowledge you as my master? Keep dreaming. Quickly release my master." Hao Tianwang's expression turned cold and said, "You don't know what's good for you. Only it's a pity that if I can't have it, no one else can either. Go to hell." Hao Tianwang took the initiative to launch an attack. He struck out with a palm, and a palm appeared in the sky, slapping towards the four symbols. The four symbols also struck out fiercely with a palm, meeting Hao Tianwang head-on. The four symbols' palm grew as the wind blew, and in a short while, it was like a small mountain, occupying half of the sky. The grand occasion was quite big. In comparison, that ice palm that Hao Tianwang struck out was pitifully small, as if it could not withstand a single blow. Pum. A muffled sound rang out as the two palms collided. The four symbols' giant palm was actually unable to advance an inch further, and was blocked by Hao Tianwang's palm just like that. The four symbols widened his eyes and looked forward in bafflement. He could not help but be greatly shocked. The small palm that Hao Tianwang struck out had actually become incomparably huge, occupying half of the sky, completely defeating his giant palm. Seeing the four symbols' reaction, Hao Tianwang was very satisfied, and said with a smile, "You don't know what's good for you. This is your fate." Whoosh! The power of that palm suddenly increased, and the four symbols felt a sharp pain in his arm. Kacha, with a loud sound, his palm was torn into pieces. This ferocious force drove straight in, and directly struck the four symbols' body ruthlessly. Pum! It was as if a bolt from the blue had struck in midair, and the four symbols fell from midair like a meteor, ruthlessly smashing into the suicide valley. Boom! Smoke and dust rose from the suicide valley, and the mountain peaks collapsed. Especially the valley where the ancestor and the others lived. It was destroyed and turned into ruins. The deep pool that once hid the bloodthirsty scepter splashed water all over the sky, and was immediately buried by the collapsed rocks. The others trembled with the loud sound, especially the ancestor and the others. They did not feel heartache for their home, but for another capable helper to suffer such misfortune, and fall into the dust. Roar! The Shura roared and brandished his Azura blade, splitting the enemy in front of him into two. Then he turned into a gust of wind, blowing cold wind, causing the sky to become even colder, but there was a huge difference between it and the cold. Hao Tianwang exclaimed in surprise. Amongst all the people, the four symbols and the Shura were the ones he could not see through the most. This was because he had never seen such an enemy before. The two of them looked like humans, but in reality, they were not living beings. They still had this bit of insight, and it was precisely because of this that Hao Tianwang looked at them in a new light, and even had the intention to recruit them. What made him angry was that the Shura actually rejected him without hesitation, and he couldn't help but be disappointed. Hao Tianwang's mind moved. He did not give up at all. This Shura had seen the fate of the four symbols, so he should know how powerful Hao Tianwang was. If he were to be moved and reasoned with, he did not believe that he would not submit. Hao Tianwang was just about to persuade the Shura to surrender, but he did not expect that the Shura would not give him the chance to speak at all. The Shura blade in his hand slashed over with a whoosh. This smashed Hao Tianwang's self-proclaimed advantage into pieces, like a slap to his face. Hua! A biting cold wind appeared in front of Hao Tianwang. It was extremely terrifying, like a huge vortex, sweeping towards Hao Tianwang. For a moment, Hao Tianwang was stunned. Chapter 1663. The Shura did not accept Hao Tianwang's kindness, and did not even give him the chance to persuade him to surrender. Hao Tianwang held back his words, and seeing the Shura's terrifying attack, he had no choice but to counterattack. Hao Tianwang raised his palm, and an ice wall quickly spread out in all directions with his palm as the core. Not long later, an ice wall was formed. Boom! With a loud sound, the tornado-like evil chi swept through the ice wall, but it was unable to pass through it, let alone shatter it. You don't know what's good for you. You're all a bunch of stubborn people. Go to hell. Hao Tianwang roared furiously. An ice palm flew out from the ice wall and grabbed the Azura saber. Bang! The Azura Dao exploded into strands of yin qi. Immediately after, this hand grabbed the Shura. The Shura struggled non-stop, but was unable to break free from the hand's restraints. Prepare to die. Hao Tianwang shouted angrily. The ice hand suddenly contracted, and in the midst of the explosion, the Shura's body was smashed into pieces, and also turned into strands of yin qi. Hao Tianwang looked at this scene in surprise, not understanding what was going on. Tsk tisk. The Shura's laughter rang out in the yin qi. This attack did not injure his core, but instead angered him. The Shura's nature was brutal, and it was formed from evil qi. It was only because he had been influenced and suppressed by the Ksitigarbha Sutra that he did not completely reveal his ferocious nature. But this time was different. Hao Tianwang's terrifying attack had angered the hidden ferocious nature in the Shura's heart. The Shura exploded, and a vast amount of yin qi spread out. Yi Dingdang and the rest had seen how powerful the Shura was and anxiously shouted, "Retreat!" The Witch Clan and Xiaobai's subordinates quickly retreated. Although some of them did not understand what was going on, they did not hesitate to do as they were told. Hao Tianwang's subordinates relied on Hao Tianwang's protection, and did not put them in their eyes. Furthermore, taking advantage of the opportunity when their opponents retreated, they quickly attacked and killed a few of their opponents. Yin energy spread out and quickly enveloped many of Hao Tianwang's subordinates. When the yin qi entered their bodies, they felt a chill run through their bodies. There was a kind of trembling and fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. Before they could understand what was going on, the circulation of their martial arts was not so smooth. Immediately after, another scene appeared in front of them. The yin qi turned into ferocious skeletons or ghost heads, fiercely flying towards them. Some people were careless and were bitten. They screamed in pain, and their cultivation collapsed from the inside out. Their bodies were like withered leaves quickly shriveling. This scene caused the others to be greatly shocked, and they still did not understand what was going on. What happened to you? Hao Tianwang's pupils shrank as he stared intently at the surrounding yin energy and shouted, "There's something wrong with this thing. Quickly retreat." These people also understood what was going on. As they circulated their energy to protect their bodies, they retreated in panic. However, there were still many people who were affected by the yin qi and lost their lives. Hao Tianwang saw that there was a trend of expansion, and immediately had a new understanding of the Shura's lethality. He clasped his hands together, and once again used the world of ice and snow technique. A burst of cold air flew out from his palm, and then the temperature of the world plummeted. Pieces of ice appeared out of thin air, and not long later, it completely enveloped the yin qi that filled the sky. He. The Shura's terrifying voice rang out once again, continuously attacking the ice, but was unable to shake it in the slightest. In an instant, the ice had completely enveloped the yin qi, and a new world of ice and snow appeared, sealing the Shura. The strands of yin qi froze and did not move at all, turning into a huge amber. Everyone was stunned. They did not expect that such a powerful Shura would not be able to hold on for long, and then follow in the footsteps of Tangzheng, suffering a crushing defeat. Everyone stared blankly at Hao Tianwang, shocked by his heaven-defying abilities, especially Yi Dingdang and the rest, who subconsciously stopped fighting, frightened out of their wits. All the experts on his side had fallen. How was he going to continue this battle? Tian Chanzi wanted to see his own sect, but after seeing this scene, how could he still have the chance to see his own sect? Even his life was a problem. He was unwilling to accept this and said angrily, "At most, we'll just burn both jade and stone and fight it out with them." With that, he took the lead and charged forward. Yi Dingdang, Wu and Lu Qingmei were not willing to fall behind, and quickly followed, using all of their skills, multicolored magic treasure and weapons to greet Hao Tianwang. "Which clan kill?" Yi Yuan roared, waving the sword in his hand. Like a warrior who did not hesitate, not afraid of death, he launched his final charge. "Kill!" The Witch Clan shouted loudly, their shouts shooting straight into the clouds. This indomitable spirit moved everyone. Even the enemies turned to look at them with serious expressions. Hao Tianwang looked at his subordinates, then looked at this team that was destined to die. That kind of tragic spirit was worthy of respect. Hao Tianwang's subordinates were defeated. They were high and mighty, and had lived like princes for too many years. They had actually lost this kind of primitive valiance and willpower. The sky beyond heaven needs to be properly reorganized. It has been peaceful for too many years, and its will has been worn down. Hao Tianwang thought silently. The old ancestor and the others looked at their companions charging forward, and their expressions became subtle. They couldn't help but admire Tang Zheng in their hearts. To have such a strong team under his command, he truly had extraordinary abilities. Immediately, he seemed to understand why Xiao Bai was so determined to submit to Tang Zheng. When he thought of Xiao Bai, he lowered his head to look. There was still no movement from Huagua Mountain. His heart sank. Could it be that he had failed just like that? All the experts had already fallen. What was the use of him being the only one left? He had bitterly endured for so many years. He had thought that after suffering, he would be able to enjoy the good times. It seemed that he had thought too simply. Even if he really failed, he could not die in a cowardly manner. Therefore, determination and decisiveness gradually appeared between his eyebrows. He solemnly roared, "Everyone follow me. Let's avenge His Majesty. We will die standing, but we will not kneel to live." As a result, a group of people followed the footsteps of the patriarch and charged forward. Even those who were heavily injured used their last bit of strength and power to launch their last impulse towards the enemy. A sorrowful aura filled the air, as if it was a sad song. Although Hao Tianwang had a lot of subordinates, they were still intimidated by this aura, and some of them even unconsciously retreated. When Hao Tianwang saw this, he became even more dejected and furious. He said with a murderous aura, "You don't know what's good for you, so I'll fulfill your wish." He soared into the sky, flying high up in the sky, overlooking the group of charging opponents. Then he raised his large hand high up in the sky. Above the 9 heavens, snowflakes fell. Each petal was like a flower, but it had terrifying power. Snowflakes drifted down. When a snowflake landed on a person's body, the snowflakes quickly spread, and that person became unable to move. Then, that person became like an ice sculpture. Immediately, ice sculptures appeared one after another. They maintained their charging posture, but they were unable to move and were completely frozen. Not only that, but Hao Tianwang's subordinates who retreated also did not escape the misfortune. They were all sealed by Hao Tianwang. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.